Hey everyone, I'm the person who made the page. Okay, so we have a Michael Jordan fan who wants to go on. He's from YouTube. He goes by the YouTube username of AG. He has Michael Jordan as number one, and he would like to explain why Michael Jordan is number one. So let me put him on. Hey, welcome to the program.
Hey, thanks for having me, brother. I appreciate it.
Thank you. You're very welcome. Okay, so you have Michael Jordan as number one. Feel free to explain it if you like.
Yeah, definitely. So I'll go ahead and start. And the way that I look at it is not so much maybe the way that other people would look at it, in the sense of, sure, you could look at stats, right? And you could look at, 30-plus points a game, and then the ridiculous finals averages and all that kind of stuff, and PER, and whatever the hell you might want to use. The thing is, once you kind of get to that level, right? So we're talking about the Jordans, the LeBrons, the Magics, the Russells, the Chamberlains, and all these guys, right? Like, how do you really truly separate, right, what stats are important and what stats are not? I mean, if you look at Bill Russell and Will Chamberlain's, rebounding numbers, right? Those are things that nobody for the rest of the history of the league will be able to even touch, right? So it just becomes a game of what do you value, right? Is really the way that I look at it, right? And so there's a couple of reasons that I would say that Jordan is number one, and the main one is I'm not sure who you have at number one, but it seems to me that a lot of the debate now, the majority of the debate now is LeBron versus Jordan, right? So,
but just because that's the majority of the debate, that doesn't mean that's the way it should be. It shouldn't have to be just between Jordan and LeBron, then.
No, 100%. No. I'm just using that just kind of just to try to make a point here, in the sense of the majority of people that have LeBron number one now, I feel a vast majority of them are in that kind of 35 to 40 and under crowd, right? They never really got to see Jordan, and they see LeBron, and they're just like, oh my God, there's no way that anybody could ever be better than this guy.
Well, now, hold on. A lot of people from that same age group that you explained also picked Jordan number one. In fact, I'm guessing more picked Jordan as number one just because there are more people in this world who seem to pick Jordan number one.
Yeah, I have absolutely no idea what the statistical breakdown is of LeBron versus Jordan versus Bill Russell versus whoever you want to be in terms of age breakdown. But I'm just kind of what I see and hear. I feel that a large percentage of the LeBronites, or whatever you want to call them, are a younger crowd that maybe never got to see them. And one of the things about Jordan is when he was playing, and obviously we're talking in the late 90s, right? Nobody was calling Jordan the greatest of all time in 92.
No, that's not true. No, that's not true. There were people calling Jordan number one in 92. In fact, there were people wondering if he was number one before he even won one ring. And in terms of people who never saw the Michael Jordan play, there are Michael Jordan fans who didn't see past players play either, and they still pick Jordan number one. For example, I'm going to assume you haven't been around for every player of all time, but you still got Jordan number one.
Yes, well, yeah. This is where the explanation comes in, right? So when you would see Jordan play in the late 90s, right, basically by about 97 or so, I kind of feel that everybody just kind of said, basically pretty much after the flu game, right, I think everybody just said, all right, this guy is it. And you saw past generations of not just players, but media members, right, say the guys that had been there since, the 50s and 60s, watching the NBA, those guys came out and said, yes, this guy is the greatest of all time. But
I know you're saying not everybody. I get that, but you're still making it seem like either majority of them do, or like there's like so many. There are some who pick Jordan, but there's no evidence that all or most NBA Hall of Famers pick Jordan as number one. Now, if you're going by media people, I mean, I don't think the media people are exactly all reliable, because they themselves are Jordan fans or just picking Jordan on, from their time, or they're just going on emotion. They just like him. He's their favorite guy.
Sure. I mean, whatever each individual, whatever their motivations are, I have absolutely no idea. But in the sense of, so you see a guy like Bob Ryan would talk about, Jordan's greatness. I remember right? Like after Jordan hit the shot in '98, saying things like, his status as the greatest of all time is unquestionable. He just keeps adding to the legacy, or obviously that's not a direct quote. Just things of that nature. So in the sense of it seems to me to be the only player that has a cross-generational kind of appeal as the greatest of all time. Whereas,
but hold on a second. But just because there's a popularity about people picking who they like, who they know, who they're in love with, who they're emotional for, doesn't mean they're factually right. So we agree that lots of people, maybe most NBA fans, when they pick a number one, they pick Jordan. Now the question becomes, are they reliable? Are they educated on the NBA? Do they know all their players? Are they factual people? Or are they going by what I explained earlier? They love him. It's from their time, their emotion. That's their favorite guy.
Sure. Yeah. In the end, how can you prove anything, right? I mean, in the end, especially something like this, it's not the most important topic of the world, right? So in the end, it's just really, what do you like? What do you value? But what I'm saying is there was, and there still is, a large percentage of media from days previous to Jordan, guys that covered the Celtics in the 60s, right? The Knicks in the 70s and those guys, right? That those guys had seen the NBA in the past and chose, and those guys still stand by Jordan as
no, but
the greatest player of all time.
Isn't that cherry picking? I mean, there are lots of people in the media who pick Jordan, yes, but there are lots of people who are NBA players, Hall of Famers, journalists, and experts who don't pick Jordan. In fact, again, there is no evidence when it comes to Hall of Famers that the majority of them, and I know you didn't focus on Hall of Famers, but if you're going to go by the media people, are you going by the majority of them? And if you are, what about the other people in the world? Again, the Hall of Famers, the experts, the journalists, just people who played in the NBA. Most of them, there's no evidence that they picked Jordan.
Sure. Well, in the media, I would say there is, and I would say that there's. I don't have links to articles prepared or anything like that, but I would say that it's fairly easy to go back and see what work people, journalists, have been doing over the last 30 years. On this kind of topic, because it's one of those topics that resurface. I mean, I remember there was the most ridiculous conversation a few years back, a handful of years back, is Wade joining the conversation, and then Kobe has a couple of years, and Grant Hill. So there's no shortage of people writing about these things over the last 25 years or so.
So there's no doubt. There's no doubt that lots of people in the media. I'll even be open to this. Maybe most people in the media pick Jordan, but what does that prove? That either, again, it's from their time. I don't think they're all experts to where they know all the players. And like you said, it's an opinion. It's not a factual thing where they know how Jordan is number one. They're going by their favorite player, the guy that they're emotional for.
Yeah, I mean, maybe not necessarily. I don't know how these guys choose, right? Obviously, I don't know what makes up their writing or anything like that. But, just you're a journalist, you're supposed to express your opinion in the sports forum, right? And so I'm not just talking about guys that were writing in the 90s, right? I'm saying specifically like a Bob Ryan or something like that.
Those are cherry picking examples. You can always find people who are a certain age and say this guy picks this guy picks that guy. Let's say there was some criteria that you had where most people in the media pick Jordan, which you could be right. Maybe most do. Who are the people? So for example, just go by the media today. You got Max Kellerman, Stephen A. Smith. They're just two examples, but they grew up at a time when Jordan was from their time, and they're not always educated. They're not going by facts all the time. They're going by just things they made up. So if you acknowledge it's not a factual thing, it's like you said, right? There's no factual way. It's an opinion. You don't know what their criteria is. Just use common sense. Do you think there is a factual thing to pick Michael Jordan as number one? If your answer is no, then why would you rely on these supposed experts who pick Jordan as number one?
I don't rely on them, all right? I'm just saying more than anything, it seems to me that it's got to hold some weight that previous generations still pick Jordan, right? It seems like most people, they pick the player from their generation. So if you talk to a guy who's in his 60s or 70s, right, he's going to talk to you about, I have no idea, right, Bill Russell maybe, or Chamberlain, or maybe if he's a little younger, maybe Dave Cowens, or Dave Cowens would never come up in the conversation of greatest players of all time, but you know what I'm saying, right? they generally like to go with the guy that they saw. And there's also this propensity to go with the guy that you saw at a younger age that kind of had this more meaningful connection to you growing up, right? There's a propensity to say, when I was younger, and this guy was magical, right? Because it was magical to you because you were a kid. Right?
But there's a couple of differences. So, for example, you're right that a lot of people do pick from their generation. That we agree. But there's a difference between what an older guy picks and what a younger guy picks. A younger guy picks the guy from their time and who came after. They weren't around for the older guys. The older guy saw the older guys, some of them, and saw the from Michael Jordan's time and sees today's players. They have more experience. So when you say it holds more weight about how many people pick Jordan, well, you have to hold more weight for the guys who are older who have more experience. What about what they think? And when it comes to picking from their generations, a lot of the older players don't do that. A lot of the older guys, they actually respect people from before them. So let's say they're in the 70s and 80s, they'll respect the 60s and 70s and 50s and 40s. But the Michael Jordan fans, it pretty much acts like the NBA started in 1979 and Michael Jordan's era was the golden era. Or at least some of them, not all.
Well, I would argue that outside of what's happening now in the league, I would argue, I don't want to get too off topic here, but I would argue that outside of what's happening now in the league, which has a chance to be, in terms of talent, has a chance to be the greatest amount of talent that we have right now. I will say, though, that I do agree that kind of the late 70s or 79, kind of what you're saying, basically Magic Johnson and Bird coming in the league, till about 91-ish or so, 92, I would say that is probably the gold generation in terms of talent in the NBA.
So
right?
There you go. You just proved my point, at least how some Jordan fans are.
Yeah, but I mean, but in the sense of, I would argue, irrespective of Jordan, right? Obviously, Jordan is the cherry on top, and Jordan is a large part of that, right? But also, that's also not when we see. If you use the time frame that I made, and it was a pretty arbitrary time frame, right? But so if you say kind of like the 79-80 season to like Jordan's first retirement, let's say, right? I would actually agree with you. At that point, Jordan is not the greatest player of all time, right? So what I'm saying is, at that moment, I will agree with others that say that is the biggest kind of talent boom in NBA history.
But I don't understand. You gave examples of the media and Bob Costas. I don't know about Bob Costas particularly, but people in the media were again acting like Jordan is number one before his second three-peat. So when you go to the media and what holds weight and what people picking Jordan, you got to. I would think you'd be consistent. Weren't a lot of people picking Jordan when he was not having that second three-peat? But you just said right now how you wouldn't consider Jordan number one at that time. So are you not going to go by some of the media at that point?
Here's the thing: it wasn't just media, right? But it wasn't a consensus at that point, right? I would argue if Jordan never came back after beating the Suns in '93, I would say he is his generation's greatest player, right? But he would not be the greatest player of all time. What made him the greatest player of all time, and I'll get into some of these other points, right, was that second three. That took him to another level. And I don't quite remember that deluge of this is the greatest player of all time, right? Once you got to basically around 97-ish or so, something like that, then the conversation was over.
Well, it wasn't over for everyone. No, so you could be. Your point is fair that if you don't know what level when they were picking Jordan, how many, that's fine. I don't know. I don't have statistics on who picked what and why, but just use common sense. Whether they're picking him in before he wins a three-peat, after he wins a three-peat, 4 rings, second three-peat, it doesn't matter because for me, I don't have his number one, you do, and you acknowledge there's no factual way to prove it. It's an opinion. So I still don't understand why you're holding weight with these media people who are not always reliable. And, so far, I know we're going back and forth. You have no evidence so far on why Jordan is number one.
No, okay, well, sure. Sure, 100%. And then again, I do have to say, I won't be able to prove anything to you, right? This isn't a mathematical theorem that we can sit down and number it out, right? I could give you stats all day, you could give me stats all day, and vice versa, and I can give you kind of anecdotal evidence, and vice versa. In the end, it's a conversation. It's based on what do you value, right? Who do you like? What do you value?
What do you value?
So anybody who tells, I value championships. It's a combination, right? There's not one thing, right? So if you say only championships, then you have that super easy, then Robert Horry is better than Scottie Pippen or whatever it might be, right? If you say only points, right? Is Dirk Nowitzki better than Tim Duncan, right? I mean, in my opinion, I think that's absurd. But so there's a combination of the competitive desire to be the best, right? That also has to present something that also has to have some kind of value, right? And just the complete dedication to their craft. Basically, the guy became, and he's not the only person to ever do this, right? I mean, you see Bill Russell, Kobe Bryant. There's other evidence of this, right? But they're basically sociopaths who just go absolutely insane over the pursuit of one goal, but that has to count for something, right? Whereas in normal society, you would kind of look at it and be like, well, this guy's a little freaking crazy, like this guy needs to relax. But in the context of a competitive field, the fact that the guy does anything and everything to prepare himself and to better himself, right? Those things have to matter. Again, amongst a variety of other things.
But so far, any of the things you mentioned so far, rings, sociopath, desire to win, all that stuff, I mean, none of these things, as you know, are going to prove Jordan is number one. And so far, you haven't proven, man, why Jordan is number one.
Sure. Okay, well, I mean, again, it's I'm not sure how much I'll be able to actually change your mind. But so that was just one of them, right? So to me, it does hold weight that previous generations, for the most part, are with Jordan as the greatest player of all time.
I don't agree. When you say generation, are you talking about casual fans, Hall of Famers, experts? Who are you referring to?
Yes, generally, casual fans, Hall of Famers. I have no idea. I don't know if there's been any kind of extensive data in terms of who those guys pick. I would say also that generally, for the most part, those guys would choose players that they not just played against, but also played with.
But you could say, I don't understand. So there's a couple of things I don't understand here. So first, why would you hold weight for casual fans? They're casual. They don't know the NBA. They're not historians. They don't know all the players. And again, you know the reasons why a fan would pick a player, like, again, from their time, they're emotional, they love him, their favorite player. When it comes to the actual Hall of Famers, there's probably no statistic on who they pick, but you don't even have to have it. You can just have it easier for yourself. There is no evidence that most Hall of Famers pick Jordan.
I would agree with that. There is no evidence. I have no knowledge of any kind of investigation that's been done on Hall of Famers as to who they think the best players. I have absolutely no idea. I've never seen anything like that. So I would agree with you there. But in terms of journalism, right? If you go back and you look at some of the things that were written in the late '90s, it was a consensus. There was nobody arguing. Again, once you get to about 97-ish, somewhere around there, the argument was over in terms of the NBA media landscape. Right?
No, but I don't understand. When you say it was
whether they're right or wrong, you're right. You could say, okay, well, these guys may have no idea what they're talking about.
Okay.
How many times you've seen some jackass on television and be like, this guy's a freaking idiot? Right?
Okay.
Yes. So whether they're right or wrong, I'm just saying that it does hold some water. Again, I don't understand. Some water to say.
I don't understand though, but when you say whether they're right or wrong, that's a pretty big important thing right there. If they're wrong, why does it hold any water?
Well, again, it's a conversation that's unprovable, right?
There you go.
So I can't tell you that, oh, hey, because Bob Ryan wrote an article in Sports Illustrated in 1999 about the greatness of Michael Jordan, that's it, that clinched it, right? Or I can't do that because it doesn't hold enough weight.
But then you conclude, though, you take it a step further. So you say that, and I'm with you on that. We agree there. But then you take it a step further that you conclude Jordan is number one, and one of your reasons is these people in the media who I consider as experts.
One of the reasons, yes,
right.
Yes, definitely. I mean, again, that has to hold some amount of water. That you and I agreed earlier that normally people are going to go with what they've seen, and especially what they saw kind of at a younger age. That's generally what they're going to go for.
No, so then it would hold water to what their favorite player is, who they like, who's popular. But when they start explaining who's the number one of all the players, and as you just said, they're going by what they witnessed, their age, their time, maybe emotion, then why, again, should it hold any water?
Because, wait, I'm sorry, I didn't understand the question.
No problem. Okay. If you're acknowledging that they may be right or wrong, so you're open to the fact that they might be wrong, and you're acknowledging that they're going by their time and they're going by emotional, they're just going by who they like, how can you then assume that, well, who they pick as number one, like they're reliable, they're educated, they know all the players, and then it holds water? Why should it hold water if they could be wrong and they're going by who they like and they're going by players from their time?
Okay, well, what I'm saying is that they're not necessarily going to players for their time. The guys that pick Jordan are not necessarily going players for their time.
So it depends.
Second of all, it holds water. I'm sorry?
So it depends.
So, yeah, and again, I mean, I don't want to keep circling back to this. I do say that Jordan is number one, and I think it's infallible, quite frankly. But in the end, none of these guys can prove anything to you, right? If they could be wrong, I mean, I guess evolution could be wrong. You know what I'm saying? Like, everything could be wrong, right? There's no sense of saying, like, oh, if you can't prove it to me 100%, well, then it doesn't exist. Well, I can't prove to you 100% that zero exists. You know what I'm saying? Like, I just can't do that. So what you're saying is if you don't see 100% factual evidence, and something that's completely irrefutable, then you're just not going to believe it. Well, then outside of the game of basketball and outside of who's the greatest player of all time, you're going to have a pretty difficult time participating in society if the only things that you do or accept are things that are 100%.
No, not at all. Because this is just
But if that's your argument for everything, though, that it could be wrong, well, I mean, you're going to be there all day, every day.
No. But remember, this is not about evolution or gravity or planets. This is about Michael Jordan in the NBA, a very simple thing. And when people are concluding Michael Jordan is the number one player of all time, it's not a complicated scientific mathematical thing. It's very easy to conclude that there's no evidence, as you know, that Michael Jordan is number one. Therefore, what would be the point in assuming that Michael Jordan is number one and then giving evidence that doesn't really count as evidence for people who are emotional, picking players from their time? They're not experts. They don't know all the players. And if you say that I'm going to have a hard time dealing with the world, that's not true at all. I deal with NBA fans. I have popular pages. There are lots of people who agree with me. There are lots of people who don't pick Michael Jordan.
Yes, I agree that there's a lot of people that don't pick Michael Jordan. I also agree that they're wrong.
But why? Why do you?
If your immediate reaction is, well, you can't prove it to me. Again, I'm not going to be able to prove anything to you when it comes to basketball, right? I can't. Like I said, we can do stats up and down for the next 7 hours. In fact, I think there's a podcast where they like each episode they like dissect a Jordan game, and they've gone through God knows how many, and they talk about his stats and translate PER and do all this stuff, and it just like they've got to have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of episodes on different games, and so like when you can do that, and those guys still can't prove that he's the greatest, right? It's in the game of basketball. How do you? There's no one number, right? There's no one number that you can say, okay, well, he leads in points per game, PER, field goal percentage, whatever you like, right?
No, but I don't understand. But you have Jordan as number one. You wanted to go on and show why he's number one. You believe he's number one. But so far, do you think you've given evidence that he's number one?
No, I mean, not adequate, not yet, but I'm just saying that has to count, that past generations, there's very few, I would argue there's very few 55-year-olds who would say that LeBron James is the greatest player of all time.
No, but
today,
that's a very selective. That's a very selective thing to do. Of course, the debate is not between LeBron James and Michael Jordan. To some, it is. The debate is Michael Jordan number one. So when you can give these cherry picking examples about 55-year-olds and 60-year-olds, I could say the same thing to you. There's not a lot of 55-year-olds. There's no majority 55-year-old, 60-year-old who thinks Michael Jordan is number one. A lot of them probably think it's someone from the past time. Or maybe even LeBron James.
In the 90s, this is what I'm telling you, in the 90s, that group of people was all on board that it was Jordan. If you go back and you read through the Sports Illustrated of the times, and you read, obviously, the internet was in its infancy, so I don't know how much is up there or whatnot, but if you go back and if you, I don't know how old you are, but if you remember any of that time, it was a consensus from everybody who covered the league, young and old, that it was Jordan, and that's all I'm saying.
That's not. No, hold on. If you said there's a consensus among the media, I would be open to that. If you said there was a consensus among young people, I would be open to that. But when you start telling me that there was a consensus among the older people, I don't agree with that. And even if I'm wrong, because I have no statistics on every person in the media. So let's just assume, that the majority of the media, young, middle-aged, old, whatever their age, let's assume they pick Jordan. Does a popularity contest make them right? And then my second point to you would be, are they reliable? Are they experts? Or that's my third point, I guess, second. And then my fourth point would be to you, has that changed? Because what difference does it make what they're picking in that time when it's obviously not the same today?
I mean, again, whether or not they're experts, they're in the media, and their opinion holds a certain amount of water.
Not to me. Right? Not to me, they don't.
Well, they do. The media does shape a natural discourse of whatever it is that they're covering. Right?
It's a problem. It's a problem. They're influencing a lot of people and brainwashing a lot of people. One of the reasons that people are so in love with Jordan, because the man was so famous and popular and all over the media. And when you have the media telling you for over 30 years, he's number one, it's a joke if he's not number one. Everybody knows he's number one. You're going to get people who think the way you do that, hey, it holds water. They're picking him. He must be really popular. He's famous. You didn't say he's famous. I think your point was that because he's the consensus in the media, he's very popular. A lot of people pick him number one, right? Those are your points.
But not necessarily today. Not necessarily today. What I'm arguing about is in the late 90s. At the time, the consensus from older generations,
or even today,
in the media, was that he's number one. That has to count for something that everybody, even the older guys, the guys who saw all of Bird's career, the guys who saw all of, the Knicks in the 70s and Bill Walton and the Celtics of the 60s and Will Chamberlain stuff, they saw those guys and they all said, no, this guy. That has to count for something.
Okay, so let's say you're right. Let's say you're right. Okay, so obviously you're not agreeing with me. I can't figure you out, actually. It sounds like you're saying, they're not all experts. They don't know all the players. Some of them are picking from their time and they're going on motion. You seems like you agree, but then you jump ship to conclude it has to count, it holds water, they're reliable.
Well, it's not necessarily they're reliable. It's just that it has to hold some kind of water, right?
Yeah, they're reliable.
We're in today. There's not a lot of older generations that would. And again, I know you're not saying that this is a LeBron versus Jordan topic, and that's fine. But LeBron seems to be the one that dominates the other part of the conversation today. Today in the national media, right? It's LeBron. So there doesn't seem to me to be a lot of today 55-year-olds, something like that, who would agree that LeBron is the greatest player of all time. Whereas in Jordan's day,
but I don't understand. No, I don't understand what that proves. You could say there's not a lot of 55-year-olds who don't pick Bill Russell, who don't pick Magic, who don't pick Larry Bird. What is it? What is it with LeBron James? I've noticed it with many Jordan fans. They not always, but they a lot of times have to bring up LeBron James. What does he have to do with this? As you said, it doesn't have to do with this. And then even if he has something to do with this, why do you cherry pick him? What about the 55-year-olds who don't pick other legends?
Well, he's just the one that's the most prevalent in the discussion today, right? That's the only reason I mentioned it, right? Whether you have LeBron 1 or LeBron at 5,000, it doesn't matter. You're right. It's not relevant to the discussion of Jordan. I just mentioned it because he's the one that seems to me to to be the most prevalent in the discussion.
So what does that tell you? What does that tell you about the media, man? When the media is comparing Jordan to LeBron over and over, that shows you right there why they should not hold weight, why they're not reliable, why they're just going for like over just to get ratings.
It's not a completely asinine comparison, right? So there was a few years back, right, where they wanted to compare like Grant Hill and then Dwayne Wade. Those are ridiculous comparisons, right? LeBron James, whatever you think of him, he's still one of the 2, 3, 4 greatest players in the history of the league, right?
In your opinion.
I mean, I would find it very difficult to be convinced that you could place him lower than that. Yes, you're right, in my opinion. But this whole thing with Jordan is, in my opinion, as well, right? So another one of the issues.
But did you notice? I haven't come to any conclusions that Jordan's number one, LeBron James top 3. Just so you know, I'm not against LeBron James being ranked in the top 3, top 4. I'm not telling you it's right or wrong. I just don't understand why people come to these conclusions and they know it's not factual and they ignore all the other players and they rely on people in the media who are comparing Michael Jordan to LeBron James, to Grant Hill, to Kevin Durant, to Kawhi Leonard, to Larry Bird, to Magic Johnson. Just because the media brings up something doesn't mean they're being factual, logical, they're educated, they know their NBA.
No, you're correct. Yes, 100%. So I will agree with that. Just because the media says something does not make it true. I agree with that 100%.
But you still have Jordan as number one.
An anecdotal point that I was making.
Yeah, go ahead.
It was a more of an anecdotal point that I was making, that it has to have some level of import where the media of the 90s, pretty much all of them, picked Jordan, whereas today it would be only, if it was LeBron that you were looking at, or whoever you want to be, it would generally only be a younger crowd. Another quick point that I wanted to make actually about this is when Jordan retired, right, initially, the first time, right, after one of his 7 retirements, however many he had, and then he came back, right? We've only seen that done once in the history of sports, have a guy leave in his prime and then come back as a different athlete.
See, I have a problem with this. First of all, why is that a criteria? Like, does someone else have to retire in their prime? Does Kareem and Wilt Chamberlain have to leave early? And then if they did that, wouldn't some people say, oh, look, they're quitters. They don't want to play. Oh, they took a break. Jordan didn't have to take a break. Oh, you know what? That's why they did well when they came back. They had extra rest. It's always like trying to find cherry-picking things to elevate Jordan.
I mean, that's what you asked me to do, right? Yeah, totally. Of course. But everybody always looks at situations that they want to prove their point.
No, they don't. No. Most Hall of Famers, the people that I trust the most are the people who played in the NBA, the Hall of Famers, the scouts, the experts, and most of them don't do this routine where they go, oh man, Jordan's number one and everybody knows it, the media, and he had to he retired and came back, and only one other guy did that, and there's just a consensus that Jordan's number one. This is just what fans do pretty much, and people in the media, I label them, a lot of them, as fans.
Yeah, okay, but then you would have to say, you're saying that these people don't know everything. So if you put a lot of stock into, let's say, the 50 greatest players of all time, right, into what their opinions are, right, you have to say the same thing, right? Those guys would be biased, maybe, if you saw, I'm just making up a name here, right?
Before you make up a name, in practice, you don't even have to make up a name. You don't have to give that Tracy McGrady. I'll tell you why. Because most of these Hall of Famers either don't pick one guy, or they pick a guy based on facts like statistics, which is the closest thing you can have to relying on what a rank. You can't go by killer instinct and retirement and personality. Statistics is the closest thing to ranking players. So they either don't pick Jordan, they don't pick one guy, they go by statistics, or they're like, you know what, they're all wonderful players. So you're right, some of them are not reliable, but you're right, some of them might not be reliable, but then if that's the logic, if you're not going to rely on Hall of Famers and people who worked in the NBA and experts and scouts, then don't tell me you can rely on casual fans and people in the media and people who are not experts.
Okay, sure, I agree with you actually for the most part. I'm just saying it has to hold some type of water. right?
Okay, let me try this. Let me try this. So I've noticed, so obviously we're going in a circle. So if it holds some type of water to you still after everything I explained, can I ask you, shouldn't it hold more water for you when it comes to the Hall of Famers, the people in the NBA, the experts, and journalists who are like really well respected from like lots of years?
They do hold water. That's exactly what I'm talking about. I remember specifically Bob Ryan. Bob Ryan. How many people are more respected in NBA journalism?
But I've noticed
than Bob Ryan, right?
But hold on, you've always gone back to Bob Ryan and Bob Costas. You can find cherry picking examples.
Bob Costas, I made this one thing. He's not a journalist in the sense he's an announcer, right? Okay. He just said something that I remember in Jordan's last game.
But that's not how you analyze. You don't cherry pick examples. I know you're just giving some examples. I know that. But when you go by the examples, you have to go by the majority. As you know, some people in the media weren't around for older players. They're younger. They're coming from a time where Jordan played, or they're going on their emotions for Jordan. So you can't rely on them, as you know. So when you say, well, it has to hold some water, that's what your point is. It has to hold something, some weight. Then by your logic, the Hall of Famers, the people who played in the NBA, who played before Jordan, and the experts in the NBA, they have to have more water for you. And those guys, you said that's what you're doing, but those guys don't pick Jordan. They don't, or they don't rank players, or they go by someone with statistics, or they just like all. They don't want to pick one as one. They just like all the players.
Yeah, I kind of get the feeling that you want a guy to come up with a statistical flow chart and a PowerPoint statistically to prove to you who the greatest player is. That's impossible. That's never going to happen.
Not at all. Right? Not at all. No, not at all.
It's a hornet's nest of statistics in the NBA, in basketball.
No, not at all. Not at all.
It's completely devoid of, not stats in general, but stats can be completely devoid of context and completely devoid of team structure, right? Maybe defensive tendencies by the coach, or that may positively or negatively impact that player's.
Well, I got your point. I got your point. So there's a couple things you brought up. So you're saying what I want. I'm not wanting or expecting anything. I already have a conclusion that I know I'm going by on facts and logic. I'm not expecting you to give any formula because, as you know, there is no formula unless you cherry pick and make up stuff and get emotion or something like that. So I'm not expecting anything. I'm going to turn that around to you. I get the feeling that you just like Jordan. He's your guy. He's who you love, and you want to find ways, as you acknowledged a little while ago, you want to find ways to make Jordan number one. Now, to your point about statistics, or if you want, you could follow up to that. Do you want me to get to the statistics part, or do you want to follow up to that?
No. I was just going to say, sure. I mean, I don't run from that at all. Michael Jordan is the greatest player that I've ever seen play basketball, bar none. It's not even close. But so far, you've given no evidence. Saying that, like, where's the statistics and where's the this and where's the that, and that's what I said at the very top of the show, right? In the sense of, if you want a guy to come on and talk to you about points and PER and stuff like that, I mean, we could do that. I could look at some stuff, and we.
So can I ask you?
Really who I am. At that level, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Just at that level, once you're picking between, right? We've got. I mean, look at this list. I mean, I could just, Jordan, LeBron, Russell, Kareem, Duncan, Magic, Bird, right? These guys, like, you're picking not shit out of pepper, right? Like, it's. You have to cherry pick, and you have to.
Why?
It's the difference between, right? So, like, it's a line in a cheesy movie, right? But there's like these two incredible mathematicians, right, are sitting next to each other, and one of the guys goes, "The thing is, there's only 7 people on the planet that can truly tell the difference between you and me," right? That's the level of players that we're dealing with here, right? Like,
but hold on, okay, I got to jump in. I got to jump. On the one hand, you don't seem like other Jordan fans. You're basically admitting it's not a fact Jordan is number one. He doesn't have the best statistic. You're acknowledging that you have no evidence that most people pick Jordan, and you're acknowledging it's an opinion. That part, we're on the same page. But then you jump ship and you go, absolutely, I think he's number one. I think he's the best. I think he's top of everyone else, but then you don't prove it, and then you question me for wanting evidence from you. Like, if you hold on, if you say, if you say to me, oh, you expect evidence and you expect facts, yes, there's nothing wrong with expecting evidence and facts. And if you disagree with that, if you're questioning why I'm expecting it, then does that mean I'm supposed to just accept everyone's opinion on that you pick Michael Jordan as number one? So I'm supposed to just explain, you know what? It's a fact. Jordan's number one.
No, I mean, you have your own player that you pick, right? Again,
Not really.
I think my wife is the most beautiful woman on the planet, right? I guarantee you, I could find you at least 1 billion dudes on this planet that are going to disagree, right? Like, of course, my opinion is what holds weight for me. Of course, I mean, that's how I live my whole life, and that's how I would expect pretty much everybody lives their whole life, right? Like, in the sense of it's just what you believe, and I can't. And I don't know about other Jordans fans. You're saying they say it's a fact. For me, it's a fact because that's what I believe. But I cannot statistically or anecdotally or video proof. I can't do any of that to prove to anybody that Jordan is the greatest player of all time, and nobody can.
But hold on, but
I know you haven't said a player, but let's say you had Bill Russell. You couldn't do that with Bill Russell.
No, there are ways to prove. If you have, I don't really rank players. I don't really think it's respectful. I don't think it's logical. And there's lots of reasons why I think it's pointless and not educated. But if you're going to rank players, if you must rank them, there is a way, and it's a way I wanted to address this. The statistics. You're saying to me that you can't rely 100% on statistics. No one disagrees with you. Statistics don't tell the whole story. There are systems. There are different things. But understand what statistics is. It is what you did in one game, what you did in 1 month, what you did in a season, and what you did in total career. So when statistics tell you that you played 20 years and this is your average and this is your totals, this is what you did, everyone has that same playing field in general. It's not 100%, but everyone has pretty much the same statistics. I know some stats weren't there and stuff like that, right? Which is another reason why you shouldn't rank players. But anyway, if someone played 20 years and this is what they did in a game, in a season, and career, those are reliable.
To a certain extent, right? To take an example from a recent player, Tim Duncan's stats took a dip over the last 5-6 years of his career. I think he was on 2 first-team All-NBAs over that course of the span, right? I think he might have been on another 2 third-team All-NBAs, something like that. I'd have to look it up, but so if the statistics took a dip, there was a reason that those statistics took a dip. He was load managed and he played less than 30 minutes a game. And again, but you're saying that statistics are kind of they make everything equal, I guess.
No. Just to make sure there's no misunderstanding. Remember, I don't really rank players. I don't think it's necessary. So even though I have my favorites, and of course I have guys who I would start a team with, if you must rank players, the closest thing to go by is what they did. And that is statistics. I don't understand why Jordan fans act like statistics are this separate thing. Like when you score points and rebound and have a field goal percentage, etc., those are what you did in a game. That is the stats of what you do in a game, what you do in a month, what you do in a season, what you did totals in your career then.
Sure, and Michael Jordan has the highest per game points per game average.
Okay, so we're going to get into
Jordan has 32 points per game. I don't know what his career average is, somewhere 30, 31, something like that, right? So again, if you're saying statistics matter, well, he's got the highest per game average.
No, but hold on. The topic was not points. The topic was player. Points is not the only part, as you know, when it comes to a player. But
100%.
So you say 100%, but then I'm trying to understand why you jump ship. You know, points is not the only thing, as you said, 100%. You know that. But then you gave one cherry picking example. Well, Jordan has the highest on points, and even on that topic, even on points, he's basically tied with Wilt Chamberlain. He does not have the highest. He's basically a tie. He's 0.1 higher than Wilt. And if you want to go by points, well, Kareem has the most total points. So, I mean, what if you want to go by points? I don't, and Michael Jordan's not even 2 or 3 or 4.
But then you do context. How many more games did Kareem play than Michael Jordan? It's got to be somewhere in the neighborhood of 200 to 300, I would say.
But that doesn't make
that
doesn't make any sense either. And I'll tell you why that doesn't make any sense. Because then I can say to you, well, Michael Jordan played more games than Magic Johnson, so that's why he has more points. Or that's one of the reasons. Or Michael Jordan played more than Larry Bird, so now he has more points. And then the other problem with that argument is, I know you're not saying this, but you are essentially holding it against the player for playing longer in the league. So when it comes to holding water, as you said, holding water for the media, does it not hold water if an NBA player stays in the league when he's older and not as good as he was and he's still playing well?
100%. And I agree with you 100%, right? Again, it's not a linear. I think what you want is, let me answer your question first, actually. Yes, you are completely correct. One of my favorite players of all time, and I got him up there on my personal list and all that stuff, and I mentioned him earlier, is Tim Duncan. I love the man. I just love the way that he played that stuff. And part of what makes him good, and part of my argument for including him on a top 5, top 10 list, whatever it might be, would be his longevity, right? Would you rather have Tim Duncan playing at an all-star level for 19 years or Magic Johnson playing at an MVP level for, 10 years? Kind of, you know what I'm saying? And not to say Tim Duncan never reached MVP level, obviously he did. But I agree with you 100%. Longevity is another one of the factors, right? Again, since it's all personal, these kinds of lists, what you do is you take all the information that you feel is relevant, and you just kind of mix it up and
fair enough. Okay, fair enough.
But stats are not, again, when I say they're not that important, if you tell me that Steve Kerr is the 11th greatest player of all time because of his 3-point field goal percentage or something like that, that's asinine. That's ridiculous.
Okay, but I don't understand. No, I don't understand. And again, you're proving my point that Jordan fans have this weird thing with against stats, and I don't understand this. Look, when you play basketball, what do you do in a game? You score points, you rebound, you have a field goal percentage, a 3-point percentage, a free throw percentage, steals, assists, blocks, turnovers, minutes plays, game plays, etc. Those are stats. So I'm not saying those are the only things. I know there's more, and I know stats can be misleading. It's not everything 100% reliable in stats. But at the end of the day, remember, if you have to rank players, which you don't have to, but if you're going to do it anyway, you go by what they did in a game, in a month, in a season, in a career. And that's statistics. So when you say stats, you Jordan fans lower stats, it's what they're doing in a game on average in total for their playing time.
Sure, but if you watch the game, you get a much more complete picture of what it is that they're doing. Right? Michael Jordan was the best defensive wing for a large part of his career. Right?
Again, cherry picking examples.
These are sure, but again, this is just, you just take little bits and pieces of everything that you want, and then you kind of build your case from there, right?
But hold on.
There's zero debate on this.
But I want to know. I know you're explaining it right now, but if you're going to explain to me what they did in games, that's fine. But if you start going to things like rings and, popularity contests and media people, that is just making up things and relying on people who are not always factual. If you go by what they do in a game, then you got something. So if you're going to go by what they do in a game, how in the world are you going to pick Michael Jordan as number one? Because there were lots of other players who did more on offense, on defense, statistically, or just had an overall game better than Jordan.
Well, first of all, very few people did more than Michael Jordan on offense. Very, very few, if any, right? Very, very, very few from the two-guard spot especially did more. In fact, from the two-guard spot, maybe if you want to put Jerry West as a shooting guard, which that would be debatable, but there's really there's no better defensive two-guard in the history of the league.
Well, but hold on. But that's like saying that doesn't make sense. Again, you're cherry picking. The topic is not shooting guards. So if we were having about a topic about who's the number one player of all time, and I said to you, very few players were as good as Larry Bird at the small forward. That's a small forward position, but you're not talking about positions. You're talking about all the players. And if you say
you're correct, you're correct.
One more thing, sorry, if you don't mind. If you say there are very few players, thanks. If you say there are very few players better at scoring than Jordan, I don't know if that's true, but even if you're right, there's very few. You yourself are acknowledging there are other players better at scoring than Jordan.
Okay, I mean, maybe there are, maybe there aren't. What I'm saying is I haven't sat down and deep dived into it in the sense of you could probably come up with some things from Wilt Chamberlain, and you could probably come up with some other guys there, right? Again, like you said, other players have more points than Jordan and this and that. So maybe there are, maybe there aren't, and that's fine with me. But what I'm saying, the reason that I mentioned two guard, and I know we're not doing per position breakdown, but the reason that I mentioned two guard is it's so much more difficult to have the kind of impact that he had defensively from the two guard spot than, say, who I would consider probably the best defensive player of all time would probably be Bill Russell, right? Like, it's not to say that what Bill Russell did was easy, not at all, right? There's a reason that he probably considered the best, if not one of the two or three, right? But the way that Jordan affected a game defensively from the wing standpoint is, I mean, we've got a few examples of that, quite frankly. I mean, we got one now, Kawhi, right? We have Pippen also, who actually I think Pippen was the most complete defender I've ever seen. And Kobe had a few years, LeBron James had a few years where they kind of tried, right? But to be
I don't understand, man. I don't understand. You're telling me what you think, and I don't know why you question me for wanting evidence and facts. You're just saying, like, well, Kobe tried, LeBron tried, and there might have been Bill Russell, but Jordan was just number one. How do you know Jordan was so high and the others weren't as high?
No, well, because I watched the games. Again, if you want...
Have you seen all the players? You've seen all the players on the level you've seen Jordan?
No, not players previous to Jordan.
So then when you say you watched the game, how do you know? Again, how do you know these things?
Again, this is where you go into, this is where, if you really like the NBA, you buy books about the NBA, right? And you buy books about Clyde Frazier, who was one of the greatest defensive point guards of all time, right? And you buy books and you read these things and you read articles and you listen to podcasts and you do these things. I mean, I can't give you the breadth of experience from
but
1946 inaugural.
I can give it to you. I can give it to you, actually. Again, as you acknowledge, most Hall of Famers, most people before Jordan do not elevate Jordan the way people from Jordan's time do. They don't say Jordan's era was the toughest era, the golden era, because he was a guard, it was so much harder and he had the biggest impact. This is an example, and I've written about this before on my page, of Jordan fans just making up stuff.
Well, it's also, you just told me earlier, and we agreed, that there hasn't been like a single definitive research done on Hall of Famers in terms of who their favorite players are and stuff like that.
I didn't say that. I didn't say that. I said there's no evidence that they picked Jordan as number one.
Well, then counterfactually, there's no evidence that they didn't pick Jordan in the sense that that kind of research hasn't been done.
No, sure there is. I have a page where I give Hall of Famer after Hall of Famer after Hall of Famer who don't pick Jordan as number one. Now, if you're asking me, has it been every Hall of Famer? No, but there is a ton more who don't pick Jordan.
I mean, how many Hall of Famers are there, and how many would pick Jordan versus how many not pick Jordan? I have absolutely no idea how to answer that question, but I can guarantee you that somebody with interest could go and pull out 50 Hall of Famer quotes saying, including, by the way, a guy like Magic Johnson, a guy like Charles Barkley. I know they were a little more of his contemporaries, but
wrong. Again, you're making you are wrong. You're making things up again. Magic Johnson and Charles Barkley, yes, they have gone on record as picking Jordan, but again, you're just making things up and cherry picking, or you just didn't do the research. Magic Johnson has gone on record saying Jordan is number one. Yes, he's also gone on record saying Kareem is the greatest, Larry Bird is the greatest, Isaiah Thomas is the greatest, LeBron James is the greatest, Dwayne Wade is the only one who could be the greatest, George Gervin is the first guy you pick for a pickup game, Wilt Chamberlain is the greatest, and there's more. You cannot rely on Magic Johnson, but you Jordan fans love to cherry pick. And another example, you didn't say this. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I wasn't necessarily relying on Magic. I was just saying, that was making a broader point, and I've never heard Magic say all those other things. I have specifically heard him say...
It's on my page. You can find... I don't have every video, but on my first page, you can find video where Magic said, Larry Bird is the best, Larry Bird is the greatest I played against, Larry Bird is the smartest, and other people he picked.
Okay, well, so then, I would think then, that would actually be a microcosm of a lot of the NBA Hall of Famers, right? That it's difficult for them to pick one player. So then you're saying, so I would say that maybe they probably, a large percentage of them would be like that, right? That they could give you 15 different names off the top of their head of guys that they like to play with, or guys that they thought were really good, or the best scorers, or whatever, right? So in the sense of that also invalidates some of what you're saying is their opinion is important. It seems to me like a lot of them vacillate right? And so that would also, to me, invalidate the importance of their selections.
No,
right?
I'll tell you why. No, because I'll tell you why. Because so far, based on, we don't have every Hall of Famer on record. If there is, I don't know of it. But so far, the Hall of Famers, as so far, what they've done is they haven't picked Jordan. So that's number one. But then that's not the only thing, obviously. What they've done so far is they'll either tell you specifically who's number one and they stick with it. I haven't noticed that many changes. Or they say there's really no such thing. We'll never know. They're all great. They respect them all.
A very political answer, right? Yeah. And again, rightfully so. To me, again, it seems like also you have a large problem with Jordan fans, right?
Yes, they are the worst NBA fans.
Maybe they're terrible. Maybe they're not. I have no idea really. But what I will say is I do agree. If you don't have Jordan as number one, quite frankly, I could care less.
Okay.
I mean, I think he is, and that's that. But again, as long as I used a ridiculous example earlier, right? As long as you don't have Steve Kerr as the greatest player of all time, right? I mean, you could really choose a number of players. I'll give you an example. I actually do have like my personal top 10 list, right? So I've got Jordan 1, and then I've got LeBron, Bill Russell, and Kareem, right, at 2, 3, 4. But for me, if you put any of those three guys in any of those three positions, I wouldn't complain, right?
I don't understand. I got to get you on something else. You painted a picture of why you picked Jordan as number one. So far, you've given, your reasons about, rings and popularity and who you like and stuff. You've given different reasons. And I understand why LeBron James is number two. So you have some consistency there. But your criteria for how you pick Jordan as number one does not fit with LeBron being number two and Bill Russell being number three.
I don't know. That's an interesting thesis. It's an interesting thesis paper that somebody could do. I have no idea. Again, right? To me, there are things that take away from Bill Russell. Again, in the end, you're separating atoms here at the end, right? Like these guys are so good on such a high level. It just really comes to how do you personally want to define the question, right? And so for me, again, like I said, if I could be convinced in possibly 5 minutes that, because like I said, I had Jabbar 4, right? That Jabbar should be 2, right? I mean, it wouldn't take like the 2, 3, 4. Those are they're very malleable.
But isn't that important when it comes to consistency? If you said to me, hey, this is why I picked Jordan number one. This is what you really want to go with, and you're sticking to it, and you believe it. Shouldn't you then be consistent and use the same criteria for who's number 2, number 3, number 4?
No, not necessarily. I can't. Consistency is the last refuge of the unimaginative, right? Like, not necessarily, right? I'm saying that those guys are so close. I'm saying I do have Jordan 1, and that could never. I mean, I'll take that back. It's not that could never be usurped. Totally, 100%, right? If again, to give a contemporary example. If LeBron James went off and won 4 straight titles by just completely dominating the league at this age, I mean, you would have to consider.
No, you wouldn't. Why? One player? No. Why? One player doesn't win a ring and one player doesn't lose a ring.
I'm just giving a silly example for the sake of the conversation, right?
Okay.
So it's not that these things are immutable, right? You can't move any of these players. But for me, at the moment, I've got Jordan 1, and then LeBron, Russell, Jabbar 2, 3, 4. In the sense of just. If you want to move them around like that, I wouldn't have a problem with it, right? I could argue against moving them up or moving them
Okay,
down.
let me ask you this. Let me give you a random example here. Let's take Michael Jordan's name out, okay? Let's say you are considered an NBA expert and you're going over the number one player of all time. And somebody comes on and says, I got a number one player for you. And you said, okay, who is that number one player? And they don't give you the name. They just give you their criteria. And they said to you, I'm going to go by rings. I'm going to go by some of the people in the media. I'm going to go by him because I like him. And that criteria, I'm not going to use that same criteria for number 2, number 3, number 4. Would you consider that guy reliable when it comes to being an NBA expert?
Well, but because each generation has different limitations or different circumstances, right? So when you look at Bill Russell, it's an 18 league, right? Now, Bill Russell didn't do anything about that. Bill Russell he wasn't holding the NBA hostage to not create more teams so that he could have an easier run to the title, right? That'd be an asinine assertion. But there are certain things that you have to hold against, right? So Kareem Abdul-Jabbar his damage was done in the 70s, right? The 70s was basically one of the low points of the NBA in terms of not just talent, but in terms of
I'm sorry, man. These are examples of Michael Jordan fans making up stuff. You're just making things up, and you're saying this has low talent, this had better talent, this NBA wasn't as good because they had less teams. I can go through each one if you want, but I don't want you to feel like. I mean, it's up. Do you want me to address each one, or just keep it simple? You're just making things up.
No, how am I making things up? There was 8 teams in the league, and there was a clear and identifiable, and the NBA recognized it, cocaine problem in the league in the 70s.
Okay, so it looks like I'm gonna have to address each.
That's irrefutable.
I'm gonna have to address each one of these things. First of all, just because you have less teams in the league doesn't mean the league is weaker. It means actually this league is stronger. Now I can get into that, but then there's other things I want to address. You want me to get into that, or address the other things first?
No. It's a solid point that you're making, and I was going to make it, right? Just because there's 8 teams, now every team has 3 or 4 Hall of Famers, right? So it's a solid point that you're making, but in terms of there's other where like in the playoffs, right? The playoffs aren't as long and things like that. There's just a certain advantage to having.
Okay, but this is cherry picking time now. No, this is cherry picking time. So, for example,
this is what I'm saying. This is what people do when
it's not when
engaged in a conversation like
this. The only people who do this more often. I'm not saying, I take it back. Not the only people. The people who do these things. So far, all the reasons you've explained on why Jordan is number one. The people who usually do these things are Jordan fans. And this is one of the reasons why I explain, no offense, I hope you don't take this as a disrespect. I personally think Jordan fans are the worst NBA fans because all these things you've given about media and rings and the league was weak in the 70s and, we had cocaine addicts. No other NBA legend has a group of fans who do these things as much as Jordan fans. You will never find a Magic Johnson fan who does this, a John Stockton fan, a Larry Bird fan, a Bill Russell fan. It's usually Jordan fans or uneducated little kids who are NBA fans today. They're just not educated little kids.
Let me just say that I use those as an example because I was saying that you take different criteria into every player, right? The fact that the NBA was at a low point in the 70s has really no impact on what I think of Michael Jordan, right? I was just saying, because I gave you a little part of my list, and I was just kind of explaining, I was trying to give the briefest of windows into some of that thinking, right? But that doesn't affect Jordan. And then as far as
it does because you said
as Golden State Warriors fan, did you meet a Seahawks fan? Hold on. Did you ever meet a Cubs fan?
I got you. Just one question. So you said you were just trying to paint a picture, basically. I'm not saying these are your exact words, exact quote, but you were trying to paint a picture, basically. But you specifically said the NBA in the 70s was weak. And you were painting a picture about the drug addicts, the less teams, and, other things about how they had it, just whatever, they had it easier, not easier. You're painting a picture. And when you mix that in with you saying Jordan's era is the best, the golden era, Jordan's number one, and you believe it, and then your criteria is not the same, it paints a picture of what you're doing as a typical Jordan fan. Now, to your other question about Golden State Warrior fans and Seahawks fans, I said to you, the only other fans who do this, other than Jordan fans, are young kids in the NBA who just are not educated enough on the NBA. So those Golden State Warrior fans, a lot of them are young kids. They just don't know enough about the NBA. Seahawks fans.
Not all of them. I know a ton of them who are, and personally know tons of Warriors fans who are senior citizens who didn't like basketball 6 months ago, but now that's obviously not 6 months ago, but a few years ago, and then all of a sudden Golden State Warriors, and again, but you see it all the time, right? And then now,
if that's true, but that's not how you analyze it. Of course, you can always find a few people exceptions to the rule, but generally speaking, if you're talking about NBA fans, not people who just turned it on and I like the Warriors, they have nice colors, not like that. NBA fans. Jordan fans are the ones who usually do this more than other fans. Now, Seahawk fans, this is the NFL. My quote to you was not sports fans. My quote to you was Michael Jordan fans are the worst NBA fans.
Sure. Okay, that's a fair point. I was just, again, there's no shortage of bandwagon fans all over the place, right?
But there's more Jordan fans who are in love with Jordan and who disrespect they disrespect past legends. They put down eras. They don't know all their players, and they just go by Jordan because they like Jordan. Or that's one of the reasons.
I don't know how to quantify that, right? I have absolutely no idea. But if you want, so let's go back. So we go back to the games. Nobody impacted winning the way that Michael Jordan did, especially later in his career.
Now you're just making things up again. You're making things up again.
I do want to go back to one point.
Sure.
I do want to go back to one point earlier. You said, and I did say that the talent boon in Jordan's era, and I do want to specify that I meant really from like the 80, which was like about 79, 80, to about like 92-ish, something like that. So Jordan wasn't around for that.
You have a contradiction there. You have a contradiction. You said the talent in the 70s, again, I don't have the exact words, but you made it seem like the talent in the 70s wasn't that good, but the talent in the 80s was good. That doesn't make any sense because there were players in the 70s who played in the 80s.
Yes, but there were players in the 80s that didn't play in the 70s, right? And those are the guys that came in, right? I mean, we like, you know, the 84 draft, there's books written about it, there's documentaries written about it, right? And stuff like that. Like, the talent boom in the 80s is undeniably larger.
What do you mean? I deny it. Well, if it's undeniable, I deny it. Because that doesn't make any sense.
You deny that there was more talent in 1986 in the NBA than in 1974?
Instead of telling you yes or no, I have a better question. How in the world would you be able to quantify the talent is better in the 80s than the 70s?
Well, first of all, I mean, I would assume that if you go back and you look at Hall of Famers entries, that there might be a different number. But more than anything, again, if you were alive back then, you would just watch the games, right? Like if you watch those games.
No, but that doesn't make it. No, again, I got to cut you off there. When you say watch the game, this is literally a subjective thing that you would have to ask each person's personal opinion, and then the same thing can be said to you. Were you and other Jordan fans around in the 70s? Because older people than you could tell you the same thing. It was better in the 70s.
Okay. But let me just try to give a more contemporary point. In the time shortly after Jordan's retirement, and actually even a little bit just during it, but for sure by like the year 2000, 2001 to about 2006 or so, something like that, right? The talent level in the NBA wasn't anywhere near what it is now. I mean, it's just
how do you know that?
Flows in these kinds of things.
How do you know that?
Because I mean, as a guy who's been watching the NBA for decades, the talent level in the NBA now is through the roof.
This is like telling me, I like ice cream, and in my opinion, vanilla ice cream is better than chocolate. Well, how do you know that? Well, I tasted it, and I just like this vanilla. It doesn't make any sense. It's just literally making things up. It's an opinion. Actually, I'm sorry.
Again, if you watch the games, you're telling me that in 2003 there was more talent in the NBA than there is right now?
Well, I was specifically referring to the 70s and 80s thing, but if you want to go by this topic, so your other one is now that the talent in 2003 was better than the talent today?
No. The talent today is better than the talent in 2003. Okay. I'm just saying, it's the same point as the 80s and the 70s. There's moments where the talent isn't as high. I mean, that's just
you making. No, it's not a fact. It's you making things up. It's not factual. You're making things up.
No, because I don't have a count of Hall of Famers versus rings versus statistics or this and that. I mean, you want something proven to you, but at the same time, then you always say, "Well, you can't prove anything to me." Right?
I don't understand. I don't understand. First of all, before we continue, is there anything wrong with asking for facts and evidence? Am I supposed to just believe anything people explain?
Yeah, but then at the same time, you say, "Well, facts and evidence aren't enough because we can never know." At the same time, you say that, right?
No, if you have,
so you want Jordan fans to prove to you that Jordan is the greatest.
I'm telling you
that evidence doesn't exist. Let's say that it existed. I could manufacture that evidence because I'm a magician, and I could manufacture that evidence right now and just palaver through it, right? And just go through it for the next however long it would take, right? You would just sit there and say, well, you can never do it because you're cherry picking examples, or you're only using certain statistics, and you're not like.
I don't understand. I don't understand. I don't understand. You're questioning what I'm doing, which is fine. You can question it. You're saying you expect fact, you expect evidence, you think there's a way to quantify it, but then you're not going to accept it. You're doing this. You're putting it all on me when it should be put on you. Why are you concluding that there are facts, that there's evidence, that there's a way to quantify? You don't have these things, but then you're questioning why I'm expecting it from you? Am I supposed to just believe anything that you explain as a fact?
Not at all. 100%. Not at all.
So then, No, but you say not at all, but more than once on this phone call, you have said, it seems like you're trying to get facts and you're trying to get evidence and then you don't accept it and you want to quantify. I don't understand. If you agree with me that there's no such thing and there's nothing wrong with me expecting it, why do you put it on me? Why don't you point the finger at yourself?
But what I'm telling you is that those facts don't exist, right? So if you want to go back to the Jordan thing, if you watch the games, I think for you to tell me that nobody, at least let's just go for the last 30 years, right? And I know that's not the greatest of all time argument, but at least in the last 30 years, 40 years, whatever it might be, since the merger in '76, right? Nobody has impacted winning.
That's you making things up again.
No, that's another one of my points.
That's you making things up again.
You listen to no. That's another one of my points. If you listen to GMs and players from the '90s, they say this after the fact, right? Nobody ever said it while they were playing because it'd be ridiculous. But they all admit the only time that we had a chance to win a title was when he retired.
No, but again, you're doing a classic thing that Jordan fans do. You find a criteria. So you go, if you ask these players from this decade since the merger, well, yeah, I could find random criteria. If you take from 1960 to 1979 and you ask those guys who was the best and they picked Bill Russell and he impacted the game, therefore Bill Russell is number one of all time?
What criteria would you like to use? Right? I think would be the better question. I think then, right?
I've gotten into that.
If you watch those games,
right,
especially when he was winning, and I'll get into, if you'd like pre-championship Jordan and how that kind of is part of what makes him the best.
If I were you, I would not do that because you're going to set yourself up for failure again. There is no way you can prove that Jordan had the most impact. And in fact, if you want to go by opinions, there are other people who will tell you there were other players who impacted the game more than Jordan. For example, a guy that you've already mentioned, Bill Russell. Another guy who people think as the ultimate team player, Magic Johnson. Another guy who was a leader and a team player, Larry Bird. I could give you more examples, but you guys have come to these weird conclusions and you're just making things up.
Okay, what I'm saying is at the time when he was at his apogee, right, nobody impacted it that way. Sure, other players, there have been other players, right? It's not a top one list, right?
I got to get you on that. You said at the time. I want to be fair to you. So when you say at the time, what time frame are you cherry picking on? What time frame?
So, well, if we look at Jordan's playing when Jordan played, right? So let's split it up between championship years and then pre-championship years.
That's very convenient.
Right? So again, let's go back and look at his pre-championship years.
Okay.
He was the only reason he was basically what he was. If you go back and you watch those games, he was Russell Westbrook, but taking his team to the playoffs and competing.
Okay,
right?
so you're giving 2 points here. So your points are that basically he was the reason the Bulls won, and you're using his impact as a reason why he's number one of all time. Is that right?
Yes, his impact on winning games. He learned how to win, right, when he was younger, right? And then once he learned how to win, it was over for everybody. Everybody has a normal career.
That's not that you're making things up again. That was not over for everyone.
I'm not making things up. Give me 1 second. If normal people have a career arc that, they get into the league, maybe they struggle, or maybe not struggle, but maybe they're not MVP caliber players the first year or two. They kind of figure it out, and they go through this huge boon of just crazy success. And then their last 2, 3, 4 years, whatever it might be, right, there's a downslide, and they're no longer competitive in terms of championship level play.
Okay,
right?
So I could find, so you're bringing up a lot of things. So let's go over each one. I could find you players who impacted the team, again, more than Jordan. I could find you players who were the main reason they won, not just Jordan. I could find you players who didn't have a downside and played pretty much well their whole career. And I could find you examples of when you said when Jordan figured it out, it was over for everyone. I could find you examples of when he lost.
Okay, well, he lost against the Magic when he played 18 games that year, right? But that's it. Right.
No,
I would argue that was one of the most important moments for the next 3 years of the league, because Jordan was a maniac, and we talked about this earlier, right? His mindset and things like that. He took that mindset from that loss, and that carried him for 3 years.
No, but let me get in there. If you say Jordan is a maniac, then you can make the same point that other players are maniacs. In fact, according to you, lots of players are sociopaths, according to you.
Not lots, a few. There's a handful.
Oh, it's a few. Okay. So, I mean, can you explain to me how do you know which ones are sociopaths and which ones are not? Like the Hall of Fame.
You just look at their work ethic, right? Sociopath, I use that term very loosely, right? I'm not calling any of these guys. I don't know these guys personally, right? I'm just trying to make a broader point, right? Like I'm not saying that these guys are bad or anything like that, but if you had a child, let's say, right, and your child, is a teen, something like that, you would want your child to take bite off as much of the world as possible in the sense of try different things, or if we're talking strictly athletics, hey dude, you should play soccer for a little bit, or maybe how about you try some tennis, or how about you do this and that, right? Like you would want them to do that, right? That would be normal, and you would want kind of a wide swath from society, right? With these, again, I'm not calling these guys sociopaths. I'm using the term very, very loosely, right? These maniacs, right? These guys, every single second of every single day was consumed with basketball, right? If you met that person at a bar,
I know what you're. I know.
Probably tell them like, hey, dude, you need to relax.
No, I know what you're saying, but I know what you're saying, but I thought so. I just want to clarify. At first, I thought earlier in the phone call you were making it seem like all these Hall of Famers are like that, but then you said there's only a handful.
No.
So I want to know.
I think I mentioned specifically Bill Russell and Kobe Bryant.
Okay, so no, that's fine. So if you're saying it's only a handful, that's fine. I want to know, when it comes to the Hall of Famers, only a handful, how do you know which ones are these labels of sociopath and stuff like that, which ones are not?
Well, again, it's a personal thing, and again, maybe sociopath was a wrong choice of words, right? We keep calling these guys that, and I'm not calling them that at all. Again, it was a very loose term.
No, I understand. I got you. No, I got. I think the audience knows that you explained it was a loose term. So whatever word you want to use, psychotic mindset to win, sociopath, will to win, drive to win. How do you know? Yeah, because a lot of Jordan fans do this, where they explain Jordan's will to win, his drive to win, his killer instinct. How do you know which Hall of Famers had it? You said it was a handful, and which Hall of Famers don't?
Well, you can see it in the games. Again, if you watch the games, I mean, you can see it. Kobe Bryant is not my particular brand of tea, but there's no denying that guy eats, sleeps, uses the restroom, every single second of his day
which guy?
was consumed.
Which guy?
Was consumed with basketball. Right? I mean, there's just certain guys that you can just tell. They're just...
Pretty much most Hall of Famers have that drive, that killer instinct, that will to win, that whatever word you want to use, sociopath, when it comes to winning. And even if you agree or disagree, it doesn't matter, because when your example was you watched the games, you have not watched all the games from all the players to the level of Jordan, and this is hold on, one more thing. Even if you have or you haven't watched all the games, you're also doing a subjective thing. This is literally just saying put 11 people on a game, and now get 11 people's opinions. You're just going on a subjective thing.
Well, just a quick heads up: this is a completely subjective exercise, right? This is a completely subjective exercise. Like we're not publishing this in some science journal about we cracked the code finally or something like that, right? This is a completely 100% subjective exercise. But you do the same thing, so I'll make a comment.
No, how do I do the same thing? How do I do this? No, wait, hold on. No. I want to know how I do the same thing.
So that's what I'm saying. So I make a comment about more talent in the 80s or 70s or whatever, and you say, how can you prove it? How can you prove it? How can you prove it? And then you say, just as many Hall of Famers have the same mindset as Michael Jordan. How can you prove to me that?
That's not a good. That's not a good argument. I'll tell you what.
Name you Hall of Famers that don't.
No, that's not a good argument. I'll tell you why it's not a good argument. I'm not coming to these conclusions, so I'm not doing the same thing where it's not like you cherry pick and I cherry pick and I point the finger at you and give myself a pass. I don't do the things that you're doing, so I'm not in this like you are. And number two, when
you are doing it, every time I say something, every time I make just kind of a generalization, right? Then you say you can't use that because it's not factual and this and that, and then you turn around and you say something about
I already know what you're saying. I was going to get to that. No, I already know what you're saying. I'm going to get to that second point. The second point, when you say I can't prove how Hall of Famers are, that's not how that works. Whenever you have an opinion and some belief on something about the NBA and players, the onus is not on the person who doesn't agree. Its onus is on you to prove it. Now, when you say I can't prove it, that's like me saying to you, you know what? You can't prove that the reason these Hall of Famers don't pick Jordan is because they don't know who Michael Jordan is. It doesn't make any sense. Just because
have you never seen a basketball show? Have you never seen people talk about the maniac that was Michael Jordan and his?
Okay, so now let me address that. So now we're going to a new topic, and we've done this before about the media. I've already addressed this media part. The people in the media,
former players, right?
And I've addressed that too. Most Hall of Famers don't pick Jordan.
I'm not even saying picking Jordan now. Let's go to the pathological mindset of Michael Jordan, which you deny for some reason, which is
I do know. You got it wrong. You got it wrong. No. You got it wrong.
Every single person.
No, you got it wrong. You didn't understand
about his competitiveness.
You didn't understand. No, you didn't understand what I was saying. I never denied Jordan has a drive to win and a will to win. That's not what I denied. You got it wrong. I denied your conclusion that there was only a handful of few, and as if he's somehow elevated over the others. I told you
there's a handful of few.
I told you lots of Hall of Famers. I told you a lot of Hall of Famers have that same drive to win. You're just literally. You're telling me things because you have already made up your mind, and you thought, even though you didn't say it's a fact. I know you're not saying it's a fact, but you've already concluded. Like, well, haven't you played the programs? Haven't you picked the players? You're cherry picking. What about the other guys who also have a drive, a will, a psychotic mindset, a sociopath, whatever label you want to use?
Let me say this: every single person in the Hall of Fame, if you're only going to strictly go by Hall of Famers, right? And the vast majority of players in the NBA at any given point are very, very, very hard workers, and they're very motivated, and they're very, very competitive. More so than maybe your average person. I have no idea how to quantify that. But what I'm saying is, you have to be in that field, and then to make it to that level, you have to want to be the best, and you have to want to get better every day, and you have to get up. Anybody can get up for a game, right?
Okay, where are you going? No, I get what you're saying. No, I get.
Hold on a second. The game against the Los Angeles Lakers today, or something like that. Anybody can get motivated for that game, right? Hey, I got LeBron and AD coming into town. Anybody gets motivated for that, right? The question is, and what makes these Hall of Famers and these other guys is, are you going to wake up at 4:30 in the morning in the middle of July to do the workouts that you need to do so that you can play a game 5 months from now?
No, I know. Just real quick before you finish. I'll let you finish. I just want to.
You won't let me finish. You won't let me answer.
No. You're not getting why I'm interrupting you. There's a reason. I'm going to let you finish. I'm just telling you before you finish. You're telling me things that we all know. Where are you going with this? But just tell me what you're going. You don't have to give all these examples.
What I'm saying is that Jordan was a step above that. And there's a handful of players over the course of the history of the league that everybody recognizes.
I got you. So when you said I wasn't letting you finish, you're just literally rehashing what we already know you believe. So now I'm going to give you the same follow-up again.
It's not even a belief. That's everybody in any league circles or any article that's written about these guys, or anytime they come up in any kind of discussion anywhere.
That's what you say. That's what you say. So my same follow-up again. You didn't have to spend all this time explaining all this because I already knew what you were explaining. I'm going to follow up again. One, how do you know Jordan is on this higher level than other players? How do you know there's only a handful of players? Aren't you cherry picking? And last one, couldn't you find legends telling you about other players' drive to win?
Yes, again, every player, if you want to get to that level, your drive to win and succeed has to be much more than, I don't know about yours, but much more than mine, for sure.
I don't know why you're telling me this. I want to know about Jordan, man. I don't want to know about the general population, general players.
Okay, well, this is what I'm saying. All of those guys, you're saying that all of those guys have it. And I'm saying, yes, they all have it more so than probably your average person. Jordan has it more so than them.
And that's what I'm questioning. No, that's that doesn't make any sense.
He lost a ping pong game to a teammate.
Dude, you could find dude. You don't have to give me these examples. We all know these examples about ping pong and gambling and weightlifting for Detroit and all the things he did. We know these things. I'm not questioning you about the general population, about the Lakers, about LeBron James, about what Hall of Famers explain. I'm questioning you about something else. How do you know he's elevated and that other legends don't have his drive and that he's all of a sudden makes him number one? And aren't you cherry picking?
No, because they talk about it, right? Because you hear them talk about it. You hear them talk. You hear the players talk that there's a difference. That there's a difference in the way that he prepares. Right? Kevin Garnett.
You don't have to give me these examples because I already know these examples. So I get that there are players who love Jordan and who will tell you his drive to win, his psychotic drive to win. Man, in the Olympics in '92, he wanted to play everything and win. He's not the only guy. I could find you stories of other players who did these things.
Okay, but what I'm saying is that Jordan took that to another level.
And I'm saying, how do you know that? And I'm saying, how do you know this?
Okay, well, I'll give you what. Actually, you know what? Just the other day, I just saw this on YouTube the other day. There's a story of I think it was Will Smith. He was on one of these late night shows.
More cherry picking examples.
And no. But again, he's giving you an example. But this is the thing, dude. All you want is examples and facts, and then the second I try to give you one, you're
then you're not. Then
the whole thing is cherry picking.
No.
All you're doing,
if you're saying
every single other sports fan, all you're doing is cherry picking.
I don't understand.
That's all it is.
I don't understand.
That's all it is.
No, if
can you?
I don't understand. I'm telling you, I don't understand. Can I ask?
Between Tom Brady and Peyton Manning, I know it's a different story.
Can you let me follow up to what you're saying? You're saying all I'm doing is expecting facts and it's all cherry picking. Your conclusions are, why are you going by cherry picking examples when I can find other cherry picking examples? So, for example, if you say I found Will Smith, I found Kevin Garnett, I found this one singer, I forgot his name, Brian McKnight, I think it was. He has some stories. Kobe Bryant maybe has some stories. I could find you other cherry-picking examples. Who's right now? Are you right or am I right?
So what I'm saying is, okay, you could find one or two. I'm just saying Michael Jordan has...
It's not one or two. It's not one or two.
The famous Vancouver game. Again, and I'm saying Michael Jordan doesn't have a monopoly on that kind of...
According to you, it seems like he does.
No, I said that there's another handful of players. Again, I gave you just another one just a little while ago. Garnett could be included in that. Kobe Bryant.
But we're going in a certain. Let's establish what we believe, okay? Because there's no point in debating if we can't establish what we believe. You agree it's cherry picking, so we're on the same page there. You agree that I could find you cherry picking examples, so we're on the same page there. You agree that you keep giving me examples, and I'm not accepting those as just proof that Jordan's number one. We agree there. Now, how do you conclude that Jordan's cherry-picking examples are higher or more in number than other people who have similar stories for other legends? And how do you conclude Jordan is number one?
Okay, well, first of all, Jordan has more moments, right? He has more moments, and those moments matter, right?
What do you mean he has more moments?
Okay, well, give me a second. So a big one, a key one, right? The flu game. Right? The flu game is the most unbelievable sporting accomplishment.
According to you, and is more
that I have ever seen in my life.
And it's more. You did say that, but you're also not acknowledging it's more cherry picking examples.
But okay, well, but I'm just saying. So what do you want me to do then?
No, I'll tell you what. I'll tell you what. That works both ways. No, that works both. No,
I told you.
No, that works. No,
I told you. I'm not how I roll.
And I've addressed.
And if I came out here, and if I gave you a litany of stats, if I gave you the 5,000 pages of stats or whatever it might be, the whole time you'd be saying, well, there's no context to that. Well,
that's not true. You're making things up again. That is not true. I would not say there's no context to that.
What I'm doing is I'm making an assumption based on the conversation.
Well, then your interpretation your interpretation is wrong. So let me clarify it for you again. Let me clarify it again.
Well, maybe your interpretation is wrong.
Well, that's fine. That's fine. We'll let the
This is exactly what you're doing to me.
No, we're only going in circles. No,
you said my interpretation is wrong. I can say, well, your interpretation is wrong.
Then I'm gonna question your analytical skills. I'll tell you the difference now. You can say I'm doing the same thing.
You're doing it is the difference.
You're saying
you're doing it.
You're going to say I'm doing the same thing you're doing, and we can go in a circle and we can go around for 4 hours. The reason we're doing this is not because we're on the same level. I don't rank. I don't pick. I don't cherry pick. I don't go by selective stats. You are doing those things. So if we go in a circle,
but that doesn't gain you any points, right? You act as if not ranking players gives you this egalitarian position in the world of sports.
Yes.
So again, it does.
If you disagree,
what I want you to do is prove to me.
I'll tell you how. I'm going to prove it to you. I'm going to prove it to you. I'm going to prove it to you. Because the topic of this podcast is Michael Jordan is number one, and you've given your selective emotion reasons for why he's number one. I don't do that. So because I'm not ranking players, I don't have a number one for you to say, I'm cherry picking, I'm going in circles, I'm emotional, and I'm going by experts. You are doing those things. Now, if you disagree with me, if you truly believe we're on the same level and we're equally going in a circle, then it works both ways, and I'm going to show you what I can do right now. You are giving me examples of people elevating Jordan. I can sit here and waste our time in finding you NBA legends who will tell you story after story after story on Larry Bird, on Magic Johnson, on Wilt Chamberlain, on Bill Russell. Does that mean those guys are number one?
No, it doesn't. Right?
So then, but hold on. No, just real quick. Then apply that logic to Jordan fans.
Going back to the original point. Okay. No. Because all you're doing is you're using, and you talk about how you hate analytics and this and that, right? Because it's too broad of a concept.
Wrong.
All you're doing is using a broad concept.
That's not what I said.
A minor point.
That's not what I said.
That's exactly what you said.
No, I did not. I told you I don't like analytics. I told you I don't like analytics for different reasons. I can get into it, but just to save you time, I can tell you the reasons.
I don't want to rehash that.
Okay, but I didn't say it was just too broad and that's it.
What I'm saying is by not making a choice, you're making a choice, right?
Oh, this is got to be good. What do you mean?
By not making a number one who you say, I stay away from the fray. I keep my hands clean, right? I don't make that decision. I don't make that choice.
Right.
So that's actually your choice, right? That is actually the decision that you make. By not making a choice, that's the decision that you're making. And you feel that entitles you to some other kind of some higher plane of fandom or analyst or whatever it might be. And yeah, you're doing the same thing as everybody.
Okay. So I want to make sure I understand what you're saying. So me not picking a player and thinking, and by the way, I was kind of joking when I acted like I believe in myself as being high. I really don't think of myself as high or anything. But
I would hope that you do, quite frankly. Actually,
no, I try not to act like I'm higher and more educated and more smart. I try to be respectful to people. But let's say as a joke, because I did acknowledge it to you as a joke, partly. So let's say you really believe because me not making a decision makes me doing the same thing. Okay, fine. Now let me follow this up back to you. If one guy makes no decision and you say he's making a decision, so he's the same way, and another guy picks one guy and he elevates that guy, you really want to expect me to believe they're on the same level?
I'm not quite sure I followed that.
Okay, so one guy doesn't pick anyone, another guy picks Michael Jordan. They're on the same level.
Sure, I mean, you're just making a decision, right? You're making a choice, right? In the end, it's all a choice, right? You're making a choice. But going back to...
But the choice is not the same type of... You have to be able to tell the difference between an elephant and a mouse. They're both animals, but they're not the same type of animal. So I make no disrespect, no emotion, no cherry picking. I go by facts. You elevate Jordan based on rings, based on cherry picking, based on you like him, based on emotions.
Okay. Well, let's go back. Let's we've gotten around in a million circles here. So going back to just the whole Jordan thing, right? You're saying what I based it on. I actually also, and this is where I'm almost ashamed to admit this in public for public consumption. It's a little embarrassing. I've got an external hard drive, and I own hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of, actually I probably shouldn't say this aloud, there's probably some copyright issues here, right? Of NBA games, right? From the 70s on up, right? Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. And I see those games. I watch those games. I enjoy the NBA like that. I enjoy basketball like that, right? I watch those games. So when you watch those games and you watch Jordan's impact, even when he wasn't winning titles, even when it was still a scoring champion can never be an NBA champion, even when that was the prevailing wisdom.
I know where this is going, by the way. Go ahead.
You see his impact, on a game. He was everywhere. He was absolutely
Maybe I'm not being blunt enough. Let me try this with you, okay? I'm not disputing that Jordan was a baller, a legend who impacted his game. But when you come to these conclusions, I'm trying to understand what you're doing and why. So when you say, I'm doing the same thing as you, I'm not picking, I'm on the same level, we're going in circles because both of us are equal or whatever, I'm trying to understand why you're not getting the difference. The difference is you go by things that you want to go by, and then you assume that elevates Jordan, and you downplay the other stars. Essentially, you're not doing it intentionally, maybe, but you are basically downplaying the other stars, and then you sit there and say, I love the game and I love all the players. If you truly love the game...
I'm not downplaying anybody.
But no, I know you're going to say... I'll tell you why you are.
You're not going to get me to come on here and talk bad about...
I'm not... No, don't put... You're making things up again.
I'm not saying that's what you're trying to do. I'm just saying, I'm not downplaying anybody. I'm just saying... Jordan was better.
Okay,
right?
okay, and I'm just so you are down. No, you are downplaying because when you have other.
The example.
Wait, hold on. When you have other players. No, when you have other players who have better statistics, who have more rings, who dominated more, and then you cherry pick examples for Jordan, you are downplaying other players or disrespecting them, dismissing whatever, and then you're elevating Jordan.
Give me players who dominated more, right?
Okay, sure.
Prove that to me, right? And so whenever I say something, all you say is, give me the facts, give me the this, give me the that.
Sure. No, I can tell you how. Exactly. Not a problem. Just real quickly, before I do, can I ask if you're a fan of the NBA, you really don't know other players who did better offensively and defensively than Jordan?
Offensively, it just depends on what you're. Again, all of this depends on criteria.
No, it doesn't. Right? No, you go by points. You go by assists, passing. What is offense? What is defense?
That's an extremely simplistic way to view the game, right? Again, if you want to look at a current example, right? Zach LaVine gets something like 22, 23 points a game, somewhere in that neighborhood, something like that. Like, does he impact winning at all? Like, I like Zach.
No, everyone who scores lots of points in a game impacts winning.
Well, everybody who plays in the game impacts winning or losing. Okay. Even the guys on the bench that don't even play, right? Like the team, the coach impacts it in a certain sense, this and that. But what I'm saying is, it's just too broad of a topic for you to just.
I didn't. It's not broad. I'll tell you why. I specifically said to you because your criteria. Remember, this is not my criteria. You said to me, who do you pick as doing it more than Jordan? So I wasn't coming up with the criteria. I was following up to what you said. And when it comes to what my follow up was on offense and defense, aren't there players who were better defensive players, or at least on Jordan's level or better? If you're a fan of the NBA, you know there are other players.
Defensively, and again, this is what I said, and then you got on me because I said shooting guard. But the reason that I mentioned shooting guard is just because of the difficulty of impacting the way defensive game.
Okay, some more variables. Okay, so I can follow up to that.
But I will say, defensively, if you were telling me, hey, dude, you've got to pick your all defensive team, or we're going to do a fantasy, all time,
which I wouldn't do.
I would. Okay, sure, great. What you do? I'm just a hypothetical situation.
I got you.
I would. If it was the only thing that we're worrying about is defense, I would probably pick Bill Russell, or maybe even Tim Duncan, or maybe even Garnett actually before him, just because of the way that a big can impact the game defensively is much larger than a guard.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. Hold on. No, I don't agree with your foundation. That's what you say. I could find you variables about why certain positions and certain sizes and certain skills.
There's outliers all over the place. Right. I mean, there's outliers everywhere.
Right. But hold on. But see, this is the classic problem you are having. We know, on the one hand, you say, I know there are variables, there are differences, there are opinions, you know all these things, but you jump ship. You then come to a conclusion, Jordan is number one, Jordan is the best, he has this personality that was different from everyone else, and you give reasons that are just random reasons like rings and media and opinions and subjective playing games. And then when I question you on this, you point the finger at me like, why am I doing this? But then you say, you understand why I'm doing it, and I'm on your level, we're both doing it, we're both going in a circle, we're both the same. It doesn't make sense. If you have some facts, go for it. You got some stats, go for it. You got some things that prove it, go for it. But I don't understand. So far, you have not proven, as you acknowledge, that Jordan is number one.
Yes. Again, it's improvable.
There you go.
There's no way.
There you go.
And anybody who tells you they can't prove it is ridiculous. But again, this is all just an exercise in it. Just, I don't want to say time wasting, obviously, because I enjoyed the NBA and I like talking about it. But this is all kind of futile in the end, right? We're not drawing this up in Scientific America.
I disagree. I disagree. I'll tell you why. Whatever reasons you pick for Jordan, I'm open-minded. I put you on the podcast. I let you, not that you need my permission, but you had your time to explain things. So whenever you give your reasons on why Jordan is number one, all your reasons, which I know your reasons, then I want to find out, I want to show you that you have not thought this through, because all the reasons you give are either you're contradicting yourself or you're not being consistent, or you're cherry picking, or at the end of the day, and this is what I think is one of the problems, you are going by the guy that you like.
Sure. It'd be very difficult for anybody to choose a guy that they hate as the greatest of all time.
No, people do it all the time. Right. Wrong. People do. No, they do. Yeah. A lot of people thought Ty Cobb was a racist, mean guy, and some people pick him as number one player of all time. Some people don't like.
Well, but they think that now. They think that in retrospect, and then they say that that he was still good and he still had talent, right? I mean,
if you don't like the Ty Cobb example, a lot of people thought Ty Cobb was the best when he played, when he left. But if you don't like Ty Cobb example, fine. A lot of people didn't like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's personality, and they pick him as number one. Some people question Bill Russell's personality, and they pick him number one. Some people question Michael Jordan's personality, and they pick him number one.
Okay. Who are these people that question these things and then place the number one? Maybe they do, maybe they don't. Maybe those people exist, maybe they don't. I have no idea.
What do you mean?
Look at Jordan by 92. By 92.
There are people who question their personalities and they pick them number one.
Okay. But by 92, after that 92 season, in my opinion, Jordan, he knew how to win, right? He absolutely knew how to do it.
You're just making things up, man. You're making things up again.
Okay, well, what I'm saying is, look at the rest of the league, right? He learned that he learned after 92, basically what all great teams get to eventually, right? Kind of, you saw it with the Celtics and Lakers in the 80s, and the Spurs did it for a while, and quite frankly, the Warriors did it last year, right? Like, they get to a place where they don't need to win 67 games anymore, right? They don't need to do that. They take the pedal, they take the foot off the pedal, and then they kind of, I don't want to say coast through the regular season, that's not the right word, but they don't take it as seriously.
Says you. I'm sure if you asked the Warriors, they would disagree with that. I don't agree with that at all. Well, okay. I would think that pretty much every single one of them would say that, yes, we did not give as much importance to the regular season last year than they gave to it 3 years ago. The reason I know this is if NBA players said that, not only would they be fined by the NBA, there would be people calling them out, and their personalities would be questioned, their teammates wouldn't like it, and just on a pride issue, they would not want to explain, we didn't really try and stuff like that.
No, I'm sorry, but you cannot possibly argue that once teams win a couple of championships, that they down gear a bit in the regular season. They just don't give it the importance.
I don't dispute. That's all I'm saying. No, but that's not all you're saying. Now you're changing it.
Earlier, exactly what I'm saying.
Okay, so if you're saying that they're not going to have the same motivation and they're going to get tired, that's true. But what is your conclusion when you come up with these things? I don't understand what you made it seem like something else a little while ago, as if, well, their talent or they weren't as good, they didn't try as hard. But now you're just going by a random thing about they're not going to play the same level. Well, that's, as a human being, you're not going to be 100% the same. What's your point?
100%. That's all I'm saying.
So where are you going with that?
They reach that level and they know how to win. This is what I'm saying. They learn how to win without giving it initially, right? So let me give you a good example.
So I see. So you've concluded that Jordan found a way, and that's the reason why he's number one.
No, not at all. I'm just saying from about 92 is when he found that way. Other teams.
How do you know that? How do you know that?
Well, there's an actual, and actually this one is not even difficult to find. It's in that kind of 93. Not each year, but they did kind of like the Come Fly With Me, and then the Jordan Airtime, and then the one, I don't remember what the name of the one is that they did about the 93 season. But Phil Jackson says it. He's like, we haven't had the same focus as years prior.
No, not that. No, the part about, I'm guessing you're going to get to it, but I just want to make sure there's no misunderstanding. The part about Jordan in 1992 figured out that time.
Yeah, because by 93, Phil Jackson talks about it in that documentary. He talks about it. He says this year in the 92-93 season, obviously it was filmed right then, right? Obviously it was filmed 20 years ago, whatever it was, 30 years ago. And so that's what he says. He says Jordan hasn't been as sharp as years past, right? During the regular season, there were lulls, and there were just things, he wasn't enjoying it as much or whatever, which probably led to some of his reasons for retirement. But what I'm saying is by 93, he learned how to win, right? Like in the sense
no, wait, I can't let that go. I can't let that go. So you explain what Phil Jackson's... No, hold on.
If you want me to completely
hold on.
Analyze and back up.
Then I'm going to flip that back to you. You want me to give you a free pass and believe anything you tell me? It's impossible. Not impossible, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to follow up to what you explained. So you explain what Phil Jackson said. So Phil Jackson said, okay, fine. If he said those things, that does not prove that Jordan figured it out in 1992.
Yes, in 91, right? In 91, they were that hungry team that every single game mattered because they had to get the ones right. You still see it with teams today, right? All the time when they're young and hungry, every single game matters. They have to get the
Can I ask you, is it bad? Do you consider it like annoying when I ask you for evidence and proof?
No, not annoying. I'm just saying that you're asking me for evidence and proof of things that, like, we're just talking generalities of the NBA and every point that is made. So no, it's not a negative in the sense, right? The proof is never negative, but there's just other things. Again, to when I say that Jordan and the Bulls figured out winning after the 92 season, and they didn't put as much import.
I don't understand how you know that. I don't understand. Look, let me try this. Like, I need to start. You know what I need to start doing?
All NBA teams, great NBA teams go through it.
No, you're not understanding. You're not understanding what I'm saying. I know that part. That part is true. But what I'm asking you is, you give these specific examples, and then you acknowledge you're just generalizing. It seems like you don't have proof. Why are you coming to these conclusions?
Generalities, right? It's all generalities.
All right, so that
right?
works both ways. Now, if
a basketball team is comprised of 15 players with a coaching staff of at least 5, with the training staff of at least 2, with the front office of at least 20, with at least one owner, right? Like all of these guys, I can't tell you what the motivation is. But you are. No. I'm not asking you. No. I'm not asking you. I didn't even ask you what's the motivation, because you didn't tell me what the motivation was. I'm asking you, how do you know 1992 is when he figured it out? If I said to you, Larry Bird figured it out in 1970, hold on, because we've gone through the circles now, so I got to establish this. If I said to you, Larry Bird figured it out in 1979, and you asked me for proof, and I said, well, how can I give you evidence as a general thing? Would you accept that? No. Well, let me answer that question, though. That's not how you put it to me earlier.
I didn't. I said, how do you figure out in 1992 that he figured it out?
That question can be answered because in 92 and 91, they were the young, hungry team. They had to get the 1 seed, they felt. They couldn't beat the Pistons on the road in a Game 7 is how they looked at it, I'm sure. I don't know what their specific motivation was, again, because I wasn't there and I don't know these people. And they wouldn't let me in on those conversations even if I would be there, right? So that's basically what seems to be the motivation for them, right? They had to go in 90-91, it was get the best record in the league and make sure we have home court throughout, right? And then in 92...
Isn't that the motivation for every good team?
Hold on a second. In 92, now in the 91-92 season, now what happens? Now you're a champion, right? And now you know you're a champion. And there's a different swagger that comes with that. And there's a different, like, you go into places...
Yeah, just before you continue, you're telling me general things that we all know. I'm still waiting for you to prove it, man.
Okay, but I think you're not taking any of these points as valid, so I got to kind of baby step you through.
Wait, let me hold on. No, I don't accept that. Wait, hold on, I don't accept that. You can baby step it, and you're going to go ahead, and when I'm done, you're going to go ahead. But baby stepping, you're going to show me step by step general things that everyone knows. A team has a motivation, they win, they come the next season, they may or may not have the same swag, whatever. But you are not going to prove that 1992 he figured it out.
Okay, well, in 1991-92 season, they went and they won 67 games, and everybody thought they were going to win 70 at one point, and it was a huge thing, and oh my God, and they blitzed through the league, right? And every single day and every single game was about, and this isn't specific to the Bulls, we've seen this on other teams, was about proving to you, or to the rest, to whoever they were playing, that specific day, that they're champions and they're champions for a reason, and that you're not going to beat them, and that it's their show, right? That was 92 season for them, right? By 92-93, when Jordan learned that how to win without kind of pedal to the metal all day, every day, he learned how to do that.
How do you know that? How do you know this?
So you see in the 92-93 season, you see that they didn't win as many games. You hear Phil Jackson talk about the attention to detail wasn't there. You hear him talk about they didn't have the same drive and the same motivation as years past. Right? That's what they all talk about.
But how does this? I'm still waiting.
What happens?
I appreciate the history lesson, man. But 19.
He plays two teams that are better than them. He plays that Knicks team and he plays that Suns team that are better than them. And he knows how to win. And in the end, that is what makes Michael Jordan the greatest player of all time. He knew how to win. He knows how to win.
And no other players know how to win?
No, not at all. But even against superior teams, right?
And other players don't know how to win against superior teams.
Not to the level that Jordan did.
How do you? And my follow up is going to be, how do you know this?
He's the all-time great master. He's the all-time. I can't give you stats, dude. All I can tell you, dude, is watch those games, dude. Watch that 98 Pacers game.
Right? But my follow up to that is there are lots of people who watched games and don't pick Jordan. Are they wrong? Are you right?
Watch. Yes, they're wrong, and I'm right. Let's just make that the standard for the rest of the show.
Okay, but hold on. Hold on. If you're right and they're wrong, now you know the obvious answer. The one that you don't like, I don't know why you're against this, but it's a fair thing. Can you prove it?
No. Okay. What I'm saying is, every single player in the NBA in those late 90s, once he knew how to win, and then he came back in 95, 96, and he just proved to everybody. He said, okay, dude, there's been doubt, so I got to prove it again. And he went full ball.
You're acting like this is wrestling, and you're acting like this is boxing where one guy wins and loses.
And Michael Jordan did, especially in that 98 season. When you go back to that 98 season, Michael Jordan was basically a one-man show the whole season.
Now who's disrespecting and downplaying other stars?
Well, let me tell you what. Scottie Pippen was injured. He missed the first 35, 37 games of that year. Okay?
I don't understand. I don't understand. Did Michael Jordan play 1-on-5? Did Michael Jordan play 1-on-5?
Almost. Dude, mentally, he did. He controlled that whole thing.
Michael Jordan almost played 1-on-5 mentally. Ladies and gentlemen, I think we have a new one. Go ahead.
Yeah. No. So by the time you get to 98, he's a guy that knew winning so much. Okay. And he knew how to win so much. That team, look at that team. Go back and look at that team. Scottie Pippen was injured the whole year.
Would you like examples of other stars who had injured teams and teams that were not doing as well?
As far as I'm concerned, it's happened 3 times in the league.
Only 3? Wow.
In the last like 40 years.
Oh, okay, 40 years. Okay. Again, you are just making things up, man.
Well, 50 years or 60 years. Look, whatever. Okay, name me another time. Let me finish it. Name me another time that an NBA player has.
Let me get ready for the question. We're going to have a random criteria question time. Go ahead.
Name me a time that an NBA player has by himself won an NBA title, and I'll name you 3. Jordan in 98.
Wait, hold on. But before you give examples, you truly believe one player wins a title by himself?
Of course not. There's 5 guys there. But what I'm saying is generally NBA players, NBA championship teams have like one superstar, one super duper star, right? Some crazy high level guys, the LeBrons, the Duncans, the Garnetts, or maybe not Garnett, but the Jordans and all these guys, right? Like, so generally they have one of those, and then they have another just incredible above all-star level player. And then they've got, there has actually been studies done on,
the only people who think like this are Jordan fans.
Brother, you asked me a question, dude. Like, this is the exact premise.
Actually, I don't think I asked you. I said I don't know what you're talking about. You're making up stuff.
This is the exact premise that bases. I'm not making up anything, dude. I'm telling you, in my time watching basketball, I've seen it 3 times to where one player wins a title by himself.
One player wins a title by himself.
And Nowitzki in 11. Those
Dirk Nowitzki won a title by himself. Michael Jordan won it by himself. Tim Duncan won it by himself.
In 98. In 2003. Yes.
Okay, I don't even think Michael Jordan would agree with you on that.
Well, of course not. What's he going to say, dude? Yes, the fucking, Randy Brown
so
is a waste of time.
Can I ask you? I have a new question I want to ask you. Okay, if you don't want to accept what Michael Jordan says and you want to downplay the other stars and act like one guy wins a ring and all the other things you've said on this phone call, you know that saying the simplest answer is the best answer? At what point do you say all these things he's coming up with, he's just in love with Jordan, he just likes him, he just wants him to be number one, he's a typical Jordan fan?
Does the simplest answer being the correct answer, does that explain the laws of thermodynamics? That's some kind of pointless little aphorism.
Okay, no, that's fine. That's fine. So I'm asking you. I'm asking you. If you don't accept that, I'm saying to you, at what point, how many examples do you need? If you had another LeBron James fan, because I know you Jordan fans don't like LeBron James. If a LeBron James fan,
LeBron James at all, actually.
Okay, fine. If a LeBron James fan came on, he was debating you, and he said, these people in the media, it has to hold weight. And these three players basically won a ring by themselves. And he didn't have as good teams at that time. And all the other things you said. If you were going to accept what he was saying as an educated fan, then my question to you is, how much evidence do you need from that LeBron James fan that he's uneducated about the NBA? He just loves LeBron James. He's just picking his guy. He's just picking who he likes. How much evidence? You said you didn't like my simplest answer as the best answer. So I'm asking you, how much evidence do you need? How many things do you have to explain to me where you admit it? Like you've given lots of reasons that make you a very typical Jordan fan. You're not the first person to give these points, by the way.
Maybe I'm typical, maybe I'm not. I never claimed to, I never claimed to have this kind of this insight of that nobody's ever seen.
But you do. No, you do. No, you did. You did. Remember Remember you said you're right. They're wrong. I'm a fan of the NBA. Okay, fine.
Kind of heard it was a joke.
Okay, fine. But you also give points that you believe are true. You don't rely on what Michael Jordan says. You think he didn't have a good enough team. You think players won it by themselves.
What's Michael Jordan going to say? He's not going to come out. You think Tim Duncan's going to come out and say that Claxton was terrible?
No. But hold on. That's not how it works. You cannot say, well, you don't have the proof, therefore it doesn't mean it's true or it's not true. You come to the conclusion, so the onus is on you to prove it. You're assuming that you're assuming that Tim Duncan, Dirk Nowitzki, Michael Jordan really believe what you believe, but they're just not going to admit it. Did you ever stop and think that maybe they disagree with you genuinely and they think, no, I had a good squad. I wouldn't win without Scottie Pippen. I was waiting for a guy like Scottie Pippen. He said that. And he said, Phil Jackson's system, they believe these things, but you're just saying, well, what do you think they're going to say? Therefore, I'm right.
No. Yes, all of those players. Dirk Nowitzki had Jason Kidd on the team, right? A 64-year-old Jason Kidd who was basically a spot-up shooter at that point, or whatever, right? No, but again, you have to have a good team, right? You have to have a good team.
Are you sure, man? Because you said 3 times they won by themselves.
They did win by themselves in the sense of if you replaced them with any other Hall of Famer, those teams aren't winning.
Again, you are making things up.
All right, well, I can't quantify something like that. But anyway, so you look at that.
But no, you can't. No, you can give some logic. There's logic. Now, you don't have facts, but you can give reasonable logic. If you took Michael Jordan out and you had the same defensive teams of the Bulls, the same Hall of Famers, All-Stars, triangle system, staff, Phil Jackson, everything is the same, and you put in Kobe Bryant, there's no reason to think that the Bulls wouldn't have a chance to win as much. If you don't like Kobe as an example, take out Kobe and put in Shaq, put in Wilt Chamberlain, put in Jerry West.
Kobe is the obvious example.
Okay.
But no. Okay, sure. Maybe they win 1 title, maybe they win 2. They're not winning 6, and they're definitely not winning.
Again, you are making things up. You are making things up.
Just go back and look. Go back and watch those games. Jordan was by himself. Rodman was a full-blown alcoholic at this point.
There is before you continue. I know where you're going next, but before I'll let you. I want you. I know where you're going, but just one thing, just to say, you didn't get what I was going to say. Before you explain all this, you can feel free to explain all the things you're going to explain. Just to save you time, I just want to tell you something real quick. What you're about to do in saying what he had and how the talent was and what they went through and all this, you're literally going to have to analyze every team, every roster, every year, and every player, and it cannot practically be done. But then you come to these conclusions like Jordan had the least help and he won by himself.
No, I don't have to analyze every team. You have to look at the teams that won, right? right? That's all you have
That's
to
what
do
I
right
meant.
there.
That's
So
what I
that
meant.
eliminates 29 teams out of the league.
No,
right?
I don't accept that. I don't accept that. I'll tell you why. Even if you don't mean every team, even if you go by the teams that won, my point still stands. You're going to have to analyze every roster of every team who won and who was injured and what counts as a guy who's talented and not. But then you should also do this for the teams who didn't win, because the reasons they're not winning is for the same variables you're coming up with for Jordan.
Okay, well, let's look at the teams that didn't win in the 90s.
Oh, come on, man. You really want to do this, man? You really want to do this now?
They didn't win because Michael Jordan existed. And every single person that played in the 90s
you are factually wrong. They didn't always win the 90s.
No, what I said is outside of that time, okay, maybe not. I mean, obviously the Pistons won in 1990, and then the Spurs won in 99, and then the two when he left, and then the 94 and 95 when he left with the Rockets. Okay.
Let's just brush that aside. That time and this time and that time, but let's have the but and have more cherry picking for Jordan.
No, but again, if you want to talk about like the 2000s, right? The dominant team were the Lakers and the Spurs, right? They didn't win all 10.
And by the way, that Lakers team, did you notice the similarities they had with the Chicago Bulls? Phil Jackson, Tex winners, triangle system, Kobe Bryant, a second 1-2 punch, the same players like Horace Grant, Ron Harper. And look at how many rings they won. So you know it all, but then you ignore it because you are actually dismissing the fact it's not one player that wins. And remember I said to you, if you take out Jordan and you replace them with someone, they have a chance. You didn't agree that they'd win the same level. The proof is in the Lakers. The only reason they stopped winning was because of injuries and they got older and traded. If they stay together healthy, there's no reason to think they can't win.
You're proving my point.
What do you mean?
Teams stop winning.
Right.
Because of age, because of injuries, because of this. Jordan, once he learned to win, didn't stop.
But I never disputed you. I never disputed you on that.
He left for 2 years, and then when he came back,
he didn't leave for 2 years.
He was a completely different player. A year and a half, 18 months, whatever you want to call it, dude. He missed basically almost 2 seasons.
And what does that prove? What conclusion did you come to with that?
No, nothing. Well, what I came to is that he left, and when he came back, he was a completely different player. Then you disagree with Jordan and other fans who were saying when he came in, oh man, not only did he leave, he came back and he's still the number one player. Oh man, look at him, guys. He retired. Every time you say something like this, I'm just going to ask you for facts as well. Namely, who? Everybody knew he was a different player.
So you want facts? Okay, I'll give you facts. But let me just first establish what people were saying. They were saying, look, everyone, he retired and he still came back and balled. Or they were saying, look, everyone, he's 30-something years old. He hasn't been here for 2 years and he's still scoring 55 back, everyone.
I'm trying to finish the point of him in the late 90s when he was the complete winner, right? And then I'll tell you what, dude. You want quotes, dude? This I'm sure you can look up. John Wooden, who is one of the two or three greatest basketball minds in the history of the league. John Wooden came out and said, once Jordan came back, he's the most complete player that the game has ever seen.
And what does that prove?
When he came back.
And what does that prove?
That John Wooden says that he's the most complete player. All right, dude, you don't want to listen to
hold on. No, can I cherry pick? No, can I cherry pick? Can I cherry pick? No, can I cherry pick? Can I cherry pick? Okay. Tommy. So
you mean by cherry pick is that it's not 100%, dude?
Wrong. That's not what I said. That's not what I said. That's not what I said.
Except when you tell me.
No, that's wrong. That's not what I'm telling you. That's not what I said.
Because he scored 55
No, I'm telling you that's not what I said. No, I understand. No, the problem is you come to these wacky conclusions. I never said to you because something is not 100% it's wrong. It's not even close to 100%. Most Hall of Famers don't pick Jordan.
Again, you told me earlier that you don't have the stats on that. You don't have that analysis.
That is wrong. That is wrong again. I did not say that. Let me remind you for the third time what I said. I said most of them don't pick Jordan. There's no evidence that they do, but the other ones, either they pick someone else.
There's no evidence that they do.
Do you want to know what I said or not? Because it's the third time you got that wrong. I said to you.
It's the third time I've heard it. So quite frankly, I'm cool. I don't need it again. But again,
apparently you do because you're telling me 100% and all that stuff. I'm telling you right now, on the record, most Hall of Famers don't pick Jordan.
About what makes his comeback his comeback is what made Michael Jordan the greatest player
All right,
of all time.
I'll tell you the hole in that. I'll tell you the hole in that. That means what someone else has to do, and I've already addressed this. I think you're forgetting what I'm saying to you. Someone else has to retire in their prime and come back for you to have them on that level.
Okay, you know who I do? You know who I do?
You're gonna say
and
Magic Johnson?
You know whose nickname is literally the greatest of all time? Well, he didn't retire because he wanted to. Muhammad Ali. Muhammad Ali left as the greatest, most athletic.
I don't understand why you're telling me this. Why are you telling me this?
Well, okay. Well, this is you asked the question, and I'm answering it.
No, I didn't ask you. I didn't ask you. No, I didn't ask you that. I didn't ask you that. No.
Give me a second. Give me a second. And let me try to explain here, dude. Muhammad Ali left as the most athletic, most impressive. And what you should do is you seem to have this deep, penetrative gaze into the psyche of humanity.
You're just making things up again.
How am I making this up, dude? This is the way that you behave. This is the way that you talk to people.
And then if that's the logic, then I could say the same thing to you. You have this deep, penetrative gaze into Michael Jordan and hating on NBA players.
Why don't you take that and look it upon yourself, dude? Just flip it. It's a lot easier to criticize me than it is to criticize you.
No, it's because I'm not the one emotional for a player, disrespecting players, disrespecting eras, and acting like Jordan is number one because of my cherry picking examples.
Okay, so that is your problem. That because Jordan is number one, that means that the rest of the NBA is invalid.
Okay. So again, be consistent. I don't know why you're against consistency. I can say the same thing to you. That is your problem because a lot of people don't pick Jordan. You want to rely on a few idiots who do.
No, it's not a few idiots. It's me personally. Okay, I mentioned some of these other guys because they're respected NBA analysts. The one specific.
And what do you think I did? There are more who are not. Again, back to Bob Ryan and Bob Costas. Again with the cherry pick, I can find you way more who don't pick Jordan.
Ignore Bob Costas, dude. You're hung up on Bob Costas, dude.
And you're hung up on Bob Ryan.
In the middle of the game.
And you're hung up on Bob Ryan.
Bob Ryan is one of the most. Again, dude. This is because I can go back and I know that he wrote articles for. I don't remember if he was Sports Illustrated at the time or who he was writing for at the time. But I know that he wrote articles about how great and that Michael Jordan was the greatest.
What does that prove?
Okay, this is what I'm. This is the original point that I said. We started this 2 hours ago, so I don't want to go back to that original point. But that's all I was saying, right? There was. But for you,
I'll have an open. I know you did. I'm saying you give me an example of Bob Ryan, so therefore that should be enough for me.
It's an example, not that specific. Not that specific.
Well, why did you say that's not enough? Why did you say that's not enough?
Why do I say that's not enough?
Yeah. No, you said. No, you didn't get what I said. Remember, you just said right now. You gave an example about Bob Ryan, and then you said, "For you, that's not enough." So I followed up and saying, "Is that supposed to be enough for me?"
No. I'm just telling you of a specific example, and there's many more if you go back and look at the record, but there's one specific that I remember off the top of my head, is Bob Ryan and whatever magazine he wrote for at the time. I don't remember which magazine it was. I assume it was Sports Illustrated, but I could be wrong.
But what does that prove? I don't understand. I don't understand.
Again, what is why it? Why are you caught up on proof, dude? What are you caught up on proof for, dude? Like, what do you need?
Are you? So I asked you earlier. Are you against? Does it annoy you to have facts and evidence?
No, it doesn't annoy me. It's a game of basketball. Dude. Again, dude, what do you need proof for? Why are you so hell-bent on facts and evidence?
Okay, so fair enough. So fair enough. Let me make sure I understand. Let me make sure. I got you. I got the question. I got it. You know what? I want to be fair to you. I
didn't ask you a question.
I know. You did ask. Dude, you're not paying attention to what you're saying. I pay attention to everything you say. You said, why do you need this? Why is that something like that? You're asking a question.
Well, it was a rhetorical question. In the sense, my real question is,
all right.
So to you, you're saying you don't rank because, so to you, is it impossible then for me to say that player A is better than player B?
Not at all.
Well, then what's the difference?
Because you're not saying player A, player B. You're saying he's the first one in the alphabet.
No, take two players. It doesn't have to be Jordan versus whoever you want it to be. Take two players. You're saying it's disrespectful to the rest of the league and the history of the league.
Yes.
And you know what? You might have some point there in some sense in the terms of the overall effect of rankings, right? And that it's not a completely invalid point that you're making there, right? But again, if you want to be consistent and if you want to be whatever your buzzwords are, right? Like how is that any different than me saying, well, I'm just, Kobe Bryant
I think you already know the answer. I think you already know the answer. Comparing Kobe Bryant to Sasha is not the same thing as saying Michael Jordan is number one because some people in the media said so because he won rings and 9 questions are asinine.
It is. You're ranking players regardless. You're saying you're against ranking, so then by that logic and by that consistency, you would say that me saying any player is better than another player is disrespectful.
Well, I never said, again, you're not paying attention to what I said. I never said I'm against ranking. I said I don't personally rank players, but if you're going to rank players anyway, the closest thing to go by facts or what they did in a game, the statistics.
But again, I think that you only use that because you think that it gives you some moral high ground in terms of how you analyze the NBA.
Right? You're just making things up again, man. I mean, you want to get into a personality question about why?
No.
Go ahead.
What I'm saying is you haven't. You've done the same thing. You've given me cherry-picked examples. You've given me this
what cherry-picked example have I given you?
Most Hall of Famers.
That's not cherry-picking.
Most Hall of Famers.
That's not cherry-picking.
You cannot back that up with anything. There's no way that you can back that up. You cannot tell me.
Which one? I said more than one. Which one? Which one?
When we were talking about when you say most Hall of Famers, right? When we were talking earlier about some of the thoughts of the 50 greatest players, you cannot tell me 32% of the 50 greatest players, drink Sprite. You can't tell me.
Okay. No. Hold on. No. That works both ways. If you agree that I cannot prove to you what most Hall of Famers think, then you cannot elevate Jordan.
Why is that?
Because the people who are the most reliable, Hall of Famers, by the way, so all those people, the people who are there, the people in the NBA, if they're not picking Jordan, don't expect me to believe idiot people in the NBA who are younger, who weren't there, who are emotional, who love Jordan.
Okay, then don't.
Okay, but that's fine. I mean, but that doesn't make sense now. Now you're acting like, well, hey, okay, fine, your choice, whatever you want. No one forced you to go on. I didn't ask you first to go on. You emailed me to go on, and you wanted to go on to prove Jordan's number one. So far, you haven't. So far, you've given no facts. You've just given emotional things and cherry-picked things.
You haven't given me any facts either, dude. You've given me 0 facts.
That's factually not true. I have given you facts. I've given you facts.
Then you won.
Okay, sure. There were other players who statistically did better on offense and defense. Would you like another one?
Who and how and who and what are you measuring this?
All right. Okay. So now we're going to get bogged down into player versus player thing, which is a thing that Jordan fans don't allow. I said we can do it. I said we can do it. I think that's the second time picking Jordan is either one of the following. It's got to be one of these things. Either he's just going by his favorite player, he's just going by the players he knows, he's an uneducated fan on the NBA, or he just loves Jordan.
I don't know what's wrong with that, right? Every single person has their favorite player. Every single person has their opinion, again, except for you, because that's not how you roll.
That's not true.
Every single person has the player that they think is this is what I was saying, doesn't refer to you, doesn't apply to you, has the person that they think is the greatest player of all time, right? Everybody except you, right?
That's not true.
There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that.
I'll tell you what's wrong with it. I'll tell you why. I don't have an issue with you having a favorite. I don't have an issue of you having who you like. I don't have an issue of who you want to start your team with. But when you start coming to these conclusions, it's Jordan basically won the ring by himself, and only 3 other guys won the ring by himself. And you know what? I'm right. 2 other guys. And you said I'm right, and they're wrong. And then I could give you more examples. I'll give you one more. These cherry picking examples of people in the media who pick Jordan. You're not just picking your favorite and who you like and who you pick your team with. You're jumping ship to come to these wacky conclusions that are disrespectful to legends, disrespectful to eras, elevating Jordan, and being very uneducated about the NBA.
I don't find it disrespectful at all to tell somebody that they're not the greatest of all time.
I didn't say.
That's exactly what you just said.
Okay, okay.
You're saying that I am putting people down and I'm putting generations down. Look,
just have some patience and listen to what you're saying. You said to me, I don't feel like I'm being disrespectful by no reason for you to finish about your wife and other examples. I didn't say that to you.
Yeah, you're saying that ranking players and choosing one above the others is a disrespect to those players. I'm just saying there's nothing wrong with ranking.
And I gave wait. There's more. There's more. You also added to that. It wasn't just because you picked a guy, because you said things like the 70s talent wasn't as good. The 90s was the golden era. Whatever, 80s was the best, toughest era. 3 guys won it by themselves. Yes, they're wrong. I'm right.
No, okay. Well, first of all, the 80s to like the early 90s, I think you've got to be, it's really going to be difficult for you to not say it's one of the 2 most talent-rich eras.
All right. Do you want to have a debate about what's the eras? We can get into that. Do you want to get into that? We can get into that.
Sure, but give me 1 second. Let me finish.
Right, sure.
What I said earlier, the 70s was a lull. And you can see that in certain situations. There's certain evidence, small. It might be anecdotal. It might not be enough, to prove a theorem. But
maybes and what ifs and maybes and cherry picking. Okay.
No. In the sense of how many different teams won titles in the 70s. It's the most varied. In terms of total number of teams, decades.
Can I follow up to any of this? Okay, these things you're doing, you're coming up with your own random criteria, and that's fine. If you want to do that routine, I can tell you why I can tell you why your examples are wrong if you want. But just to save time, I'll even make it simpler. I can find variables on Jordan's time and then say, well, his league wasn't as tough as that time. It doesn't mean I'm right or you're wrong. It just means I don't come to these wacky conclusions and you do because you love Jordan.
No. Yes, you can. You can come up with specifics of when Jordan played and how that was different, right? One thing that Jordan has a knock against, Jordan's not infallible, right? He never played in the finals against. He skipped out on those big time centers.
I wouldn't even use that against Jordan because it's not his fault. I wouldn't use that against Jordan. It's not his fault.
This is what I'm saying. But if you wanted to kind of nitpick, that's what you could find.
But
my point about the 70s, what we were talking about earlier, my point about the 70s is that it was clearly
to you. That's a lot of
trouble to everybody. There's books written about this.
No, there's most people.
Multiple volumes.
I don't know what you're talking about.
The cocaine problem that was in the league.
No, what is cocaine? Again, you're cherry picking. I could find you evidence of the players in the 90s and 80s smoking weed and going to strip clubs and drinking and cheating on their wives. What does that mean?
Yes. Okay. Yes, and that affected their performance. It wasn't as prevalent as cocaine in the 70s.
How do you know people drink and smoke weed more than they do cocaine?
Okay, in the 70s, NBA players, there was a cocaine problem. This is, quite frankly, the fact that you're arguing against this.
You're not understanding what I'm saying. You're not understanding what I'm saying. You're not understanding. Well, then, if it looks bad, let me clarify so I don't look bad. I didn't say to you there wasn't a cocaine problem in the 70s. You're not paying attention to what I'm saying. I just don't say that because the 90s had alcohol and marijuana and strip clubs and cheating. I don't say, well, that era is weaker or better. Just like you're saying, well, there's cocaine, therefore it's not as good. You come to these wacky conclusions.
I'm just giving you an example.
I'm following up to your examples.
You asked me, why did I say about the 70s? This is one of the reasons, dude. One of the reasons.
Do you understand what my follow-up is? Maybe you're not getting my follow-up. Do you know what my follow-up is, just to make sure?
No. Go ahead.
My follow-up to you is twofold. Just try to have an open mind. Whatever examples you find of why you think an era, whatever era you define as an era, that's the first problem. How are you defining an era? And then whatever examples you coming up with, it doesn't mean the league is good or not good. It's just you finding things and assuming that makes the league not good. But if you disagree, fine. If you disagree with that, fine. Then the other third thing would be, that was actually more than 2, I guess. I could find you things, as you acknowledge, on Jordan's era where it was negativity, but that doesn't mean Jordan's era is bad or good because of those things.
It means that Jordan's era was better because, again, once you start getting to mid to late 90s, the talent drops off as well, right?
Again, you're making things up.
This is just a natural evolution of.
And you can say the same thing in late 80s and 90s. You can say the same thing in Jordan's time. No, you don't have to repeat yourself. I got you the first time. I'm saying you can say the same thing in the 80s and 90s.
What could I say about the 80s and
you can say there was an ebb
much
of flow.
talent.
You can say there was an ebb and flow where the talent dropped off. Would you like examples?
There was. It did. It happened in the late 90s.
Okay,
And it continued up until,
you're
like,
making things up
the mid to
again.
late
You're
2000s.
making things up again.
No,
It
again,
happened in the late 80s and 90s.
That the talent dropped off in the 80s and 90s?
No, I don't think it dropped off, but I'm saying if you think there was a drop off in your time frame that you came up with, I could find you examples where the talent dropped off in other times when Jordan played.
Yes, I'm giving you that. I'm giving you the time. In the 70s, it dropped off. It picked up
No,
in the 80s and early 90s, and then it
you didn't
tailed
pay
off
attention to
again
what I
in the
said.
late 90s.
You didn't pay attention to what I said. I said I could
I'm
find
agreeing
you.
with you. I'm saying, yes, there are ebbs and flows in the timeline of the NBA in terms of talent.
No, but I said to you.
That's what I'm
No,
saying.
I said to you specifically. I could find examples of talent level dropping off in other times Jordan played.
That would be the later 90s.
Okay, well, then I must not be understanding your point. If you no, it's not the late 90s. Look, then that's the problem. I'm saying to you other times Jordan played
When?
in the late 80s and early 90s. You know where I'm going with this. You know, I think it's ridiculous. So the reason it's not, but I don't agree it's asinine because this, talking about authors and books, this has been written about, and this is one of the problems with Jordan fans. You don't do your research. Lots of people felt, I'm not talking about a few cherry-picking examples. Lots of people felt that Jordan won because all the legends were gone, injured, retired, the league was watered down, expansion hurt the league, and it was easier for him to win. I can give you specific examples if you want.
In the late 80s and early 90s?
Yes.
Name, please.
Okay,
Please, let's
okay,
hear it.
sure,
Because
sure.
the late 80s, early 90s is the boon of talent that the NBA had been waiting
That
for.
says you, the Jordan fan. This is the problem. You
Says everybody. This is,
says everybody. You're making things up.
The
Says
Lakers
everybody.
were demolishing people. The Pistons were incredible. The Bucks were really, really
Do you
good.
know who
right?
retired in the early?
Rockets were good.
Do you know who retired who was getting older in the late 80s, early 90s? Do you not know?
Yes, I know it all. And do you know who was becoming of age?
That's not the point. I'm
Basically,
using the
whole
same
dream team.
example that
That's
you
exactly
said.
the point.
No, that's not the point.
No. This is exactly the point.
Unbelievable.
What the lull is created. The lull in talent is created because there's not enough young players to supplement the aging players.
You're saying something you're saying something that's true, and then you're assuming this applies when it says it apply. That's the problem. I know there's an ebb and flow, and players come and go, and it fluctuates. But you're just concluding this is what happened, and it happened magically when Jordan left. You're just making things up.
No, not at all.
Okay.
Not at all.
Okay.
I'm just saying it was a natural ebb and flow of the league. That's all I'm saying.
I don't know.
You can't
When did
argue
it
from,
naturally?
like-
But no. Maybe I need to understand what you're saying. You're kind of both ways on this. You say it's an ebb and flow. It's natural. It happens all the time. But you seem to act like Jordan's era was the toughest, and it happened after he left in the late 90s.
No, I never said he was the toughest because I wouldn't.
You said,
know
"Oh,
how
come
to
on!" You said
quantify-
his era was golden or something like that. It was one of the toughest or something
Well,
like that.
no. Like in the very beginning, right? From like the early '80s to about '92ish, maybe '93. That was one of the golden eras of the NBA in terms of talent.
Says the Jordan fan.
The only thing that approaches it. It has nothing to do with, well, it has a lot to do with Jordan, obviously. Because he was
Right,
really good.
it does.
But the only thing that approaches that in terms of talent is the game today.
And I'm going to ask, how do you know this? And you're going to give me some evidence, right?
No, just look at the talent. Look at the talent level on the court, right? And all of these guys playing at really, really, really high levels. Right?
And can I ask you before you continue? You don't think you're disrespecting other players and legends with this opinion and this routine?
No, not at all. It's not their fault. Some of them might be good. Look, the 70s weren't devoid of talent. It's not like all of a sudden we were throwing out, CYO.
All right, so hold on. One of the ways that human beings can really understand how people feel is to put themselves in the other person's shoes. So imagine you were a Hall of Famer in the 70s and you sweated and you balled and you played well. And some younger guy in the future told you, the talent level was different in those times. Oh yeah, there were good players. It was a good time, but it was not as good. And it was an ebb and flow and it was better today or not better. How would that make you feel? That you weren't even there? That guy wasn't there?
I would probably show show them the plaque that I have at my house that says I'm in the Hall of Fame, and I would probably not care at all what that person has to say.
Okay.
Right? I don't really see. I don't see Hot Rod Hondo. If he wasn't dead, right? I don't really see him kind of looking at my opinion and invalidating his career because I'm saying that the talent wasn't
exactly. But they don't care, and they, as you pointed out in detail, they shouldn't have to. They're ballers, they're good. But you are that guy who's coming to the conclusion of disrespecting them and downplaying them, and then you say, "No, I'm not disrespecting and downplaying them."
I'm not disrespecting. I'm not saying that Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Right.
I know you didn't say Kareem. You know what I meant.
He played in the 70s.
I didn't say you said that. No, you're taking a general time frame.
Overall, if you take, well, I'm trying to make a general argument. If you take an overall snapshot of the league and its top end talent,
I know what you're saying. I know what you're saying, and I'm following up to saying you're making things up.
I'm not making things up. There's no debate. Quite frankly, the fact that you're even arguing against that.
Well, I'm not arguing with myself, right? I mean, you're cherry picking examples and coming to conclusions and saying it's not proof. It fluctuates. There's a ebb and flow, but I'm not disrespecting them. You are disrespecting players, legends, Hall of Famers when you downplay and dismiss them like that.
I'm not dismissing them personally. I'm not giving you an example of John Havlicek deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. Right.
I know you're not talking about Kareem and John Havlicek. I know that. You're talking about a general thing, as you've said, and I know that. I'm following up to that. You are downplaying and disrespecting.
That's not those guys' fault. They're just not as good as generations before or after.
And that's you. Right? And that's you making things up.
Look, but you can talk about this whenever. We can talk about the history of Prussian emperors, right? Like, and you could say, well, there's ones that were, they did, social programs and they were good, and there's other ones who were maniacs that just killed half the population. Like, there's good ones and there's bad ones, right? There's good times and there's bad times, right? Like that's just the way.
No, but what does that have? I'm
sorry that offends your basketball sensibilities.
It doesn't offend me. I wasn't playing in the NBA at that time, but I'm sure it offends a lot of the people and their families who played at that time.
Well, again, you're speaking for them, so I don't know. Again, I would guarantee you that for most of them it doesn't offend them because they could care less about what I think.
I think you should not. I think you should not guarantee. You should not guarantee. You don't know these things. But anyway, this is your opinion. You come to these conclusions. You came on here to prove it. So I'm following up to you, letting you know that you're just making things up, man.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to follow up and say that if it was possible for a person to prove this, that you wouldn't believe it anyway.
Well, now you're making things up again.
Again, you're making things up too. You're making things up all the time.
No. If you have facts, if you have facts and proof on something, why would I not accept it?
I'm going to believe it anyway.
You didn't pay attention to what I said. You said to me, if you have the facts to prove it, I'm not going to accept it. That is you making things up. Why would I not accept facts on the NBA and Michael Jordan?
I don't know.
Well, there you go. Then you're making.
You told me. You told me that I am incapable of accepting facts as well. How do you know that? I haven't seen you make. You told me about these nameless Hall of Famers who this large.
I'll answer that. I'll answer that. I got you.
And that's the nature. I'm sorry. 1 second. Let me finish. That's the nature of this conversation, right? That's the nature of this conversation. This conversation is unanswerable. It comes back to what do you value and what do you like?
Okay,
right?
so there's. I got you, man. I think you've clarified it very good. Let me follow up to. There's three things there. Like I'm going to have to go into detail because you said three different things. The first, I don't know what the first thing was. You said I haven't given you any facts. That is not true. I've given you facts. I'll get to that if you want to know what the facts are. But let me just establish that I've given facts. Now to the second point, I think it was the second point, that I've given nameless Hall of Famers. That's not true. I've given names of players depending on the topic, like Wilt Chamberlain, Bill Russell, Magic Johnson, Larry Bird. I've given you depending on the topic. Now you're right. I haven't gone into too much detail. And the reason was because we were just following up on different things, zigzagging around on different topics, not because I didn't have anyone, just because I was going over different topics that you brought up. And when you say the third point about the nature of this phone call, most of this has been you on the onus to prove it. If that's what you mean, I accept that. But what's wrong with that? You are the one who has Jordan as number one. You think think you have evidence. You said in this phone call, you're right and they're wrong. And you believe that, that when you're testing things like 3 guys won it by himself. So you're the one who has to prove these things, right? Or no?
Okay. Well, again, go back and here's the thing. I said from the get-go that individual stats to me are meaningless in the sense that they all need context and they need broad context, right? So any guy who comes on here and tells you that Michael Jordan is the best because of his per game average, his PER, his effective field goal, whatever you want to fill in the blank with stats X, Y, and Z here, right? Like that guy, in the end, he could be proving anything with those numbers, right? It's not going to prove anything to anybody. He could be talking about Jordan. He could be talking about Ralph Sampson. He could be talking about, Dave Crozier, right? It doesn't matter who he's talking about, right? Those numbers aren't going to prove anything. The way that I would say is if you go back and you watch those games, there is an impact that is undeniable that no other player that I have seen has that kind of impact in a game and in winning a game.
You said undeniable. I deny it, and others deny it.
I would say to people listening, go back and watch those games. Go back and watch those games.
So pick Jordan games, watch those. What about the other games? They should watch them or no?
Sure.
Okay.
Pick them all.
Okay. So if somebody watches all the games, which is not practical for a human being to do that, and no one's been alive, so I don't know how they would do that. But let's say someone magically did it. They drank a lot of Gatorade, and they watched all the games, and they watched all the legends, and they played them all. You're going to rely on their opinion if they don't pick Jordan?
No, not necessarily. Again, it's all subjective. It's all personal, right? There's no, in the end, and I've said this 7 times at least, in the end, it really comes down to what you value, right? What you value. It's obvious that you're never going to value Michael Jordan's accomplishments because you seem to have this weird thing with their fans.
Well, that's you making no. I'm not gonna. No, that's it. No, I don't accept that. No, I was with you for a while.
Maybe that's not the reason.
I was with you. Let me follow up to that. You said I said 7 times it's an opinion all that. No one disputes that you said from the beginning it's an opinion. We're not disputing you on that part. We're disputing you, or I'm disputing you, sorry, when you say other things like 3 guys win a ring by themselves. One of them is Dirk, Tim Duncan, Michael Jordan, and the talent level wasn't as good in the 70s. And, I'm right and they're wrong. And, I watched Michael Jordan, therefore he's the best. These are things we're disputing on. You're not getting that. And then
I never said he's the best because I watched him. And when I said
I didn't say
that was clearly a joke.
I didn't say you said that. That was the only reason.
Yeah.
But you said more than once, not as a joke. Anyone can play this tape back. That all you have to do is watch the tape. Go watch the tape. I saw Michael Jordan play. I saw other players play. You're going by your random tapes and your opinion and a subjective thing, and that's fine if you want to pick your favorites. But lots of people play lots of tapes, and they're older than you, and they saw lots of players, and they don't come to these wacky conclusions where you go, I'm right and they're wrong. 3 guys win a ring by themselves, and Jordan was 1, Tim Duncan was 2, Dirk Nowitzki was 3. I can give you more examples, but you know what you said. The point I'm trying to make to you is I'm not questioning you on those 7 times, as you said, that you said it was an opinion. I don't question that part. I question the other uneducated things you said. So now, to your last point, you said, what was that point you said about I'm not going to accept it, have this weird thing against Michael Jordan? What was that whole thing? Just to clarify, what was that thing? You said something like you said that's fine. You said something like you're not going to accept it if someone has some facts on Jordan, and you had this weird thing against people picking Jordan and his fans, or something like that.
Yeah. Well, basically, I guess the point was something to the effect of you could have all the facts in front of you, and you wouldn't accept it either. But
that's making things up. That's making things up.
You're not going to accept it.
No, can I ask you?
When you say that I won't accept it.
No.
When I say I won't accept it.
Let me address that. That's not the first time you've done that. You've assumed that I'm not going to accept facts. I do when it comes to the NBA and Michael Jordan. I'm going to accept facts. Who's going to deny facts other than Jordan fans like yourselves?
You came in here not ready to accept any facts. Right? And that's fine.
Can you give me one example of a fact I didn't accept from Michael Jordan in the NBA?
I don't have any the NBA doesn't have rock solid facts, right? Statistics aren't enough.
No, I had a question. My question was, can you name one fact on Michael Jordan, the NBA, that I didn't accept?
Can you name one that I haven't accepted?
Okay, sure, yes. I can name you 10. Now I asked the question. Do you want me to go first, or do you want to go first?
No, go ahead. I can't name any off the top of my head.
Okay, then why have you said more than? But why have you said more than once? You've said this more than once. You're not going to accept the facts.
I misspoke. I can say that it is, in my opinion, as close to a certifiable fact.
Hey, please subscribe. And if you disagree with me on something, you can go on my program and show me your facts on whatever you disagree on. If you want to go on, let's set it up. Send me an email. The email is right there in the description section. Thank you.